Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 210! My name is Nbz, and I'm feeling a little cold at the moment. It's a bit chilly outside. I see some frost on the tips of my windows, and it's a cold time of year, a good time of year to be inside playing video games, and I'm sure that it's probably much worse where you are, Bally, up in Scotland, where I heard that when my parents left there, the snow was a-falling.
We had like a tiny drizzling of snow. Like there was one morning where there was just like that little bit outside, and then it had gone by about lunchtime. So yeah, not too much snow, but yeah, it's cold.
Not piling on yet.
It's game of the year time. It's that favorite cold time inside playing video games, ranking video games.
Wrap up in a warm blanket, looking at all the fun things going on, and that's what we're gonna be doing today, of course. But Bally, how are you doing otherwise? How are things going?
I'm very good. Just cramming in games before traveling down south.
Good job that the Switch exists, of course, because it means you can take some of those games with you, but still tricky.
True,
balance.
But it's unfortunate that all 4 games I'm playing at the moment are on my Series X. So
yeah
that's the slight frustration, but we'll get there.
Yeah, of course. We're here to talk about the video games and stuff and things we've been playing, but also some other things like our Game of the Year, which we'll be starting. So, Bally, do you want to tell the folks what today's show is going to be about?
For the first segment, we're going to be talking about the games that we have been playing, and then for the second segment, it is our official top 10 games of the year that didn't actually come out this year. So that's a top 10 personal list each, so that's 20 games, and that's obviously cross-platform of all the games that we've been playing this year that didn't come out this year.
Yeah, it's a fun time as always, and we'll also have some of your emails sending in your favourite games of the year that didn't come out in 2021 as well. Look forward to going through those. Always one of my favourite ones, and interesting because we pick through all the stuff that we had missed out on and yet still enjoyed this year. Looking forward to it. But we're going to kick things off, obviously, with the video games that we've been playing, and I have, there's been some sales going on, as always, with Black Friday and all that stuff. I went on Steam and I bought a bunch of stuff. I bought Inscription and like Pony Island and One Shot and all these like smaller games that I've had my eye on for a while. But there was also a Switch shop sale, the eShop sale, that had a bunch of different things.
Switch shop sale.
Yeah, say that 7 times fast. And there are a few things I've been meaning to pick up for a while, so I've picked up a few things that obviously I'll keep in the back of my pocket and hopefully talk about at the start of next year. But one of those games was Sayonara Wild Hearts, a game published by Annapurna, and one of those that I had my eye on for a long time. I think described by a lot of people as a playable pop album, which is a really unique and interesting way to approach it, because it is about that length. It's like probably about an hour long if you just shoot straight from the beginning to the end of it. And it is, how do I even describe it? It's basically like a runner. So think of like, Temple Run's a really bad example because it's not like that at all, but
it's like Temple Run, but if it was just a music video,
it's I guess Thumper might be a good example. Actually, like it's almost like that. But the other thing about it is that it just switches perspectives constantly and like constantly throws like new gameplay elements at you every level you go through, so it feels like this just musical celebration that is filled with crazy visuals and just almost this psychedelic vibe. It's very purple and pink and just has a lot of crazy stuff going on. It has this kind of heart theming around it. The game's called Sayonara Wild Hearts, of course, and so some levels you'll go like inside this kind of heart-shaped hole, and you'll be surfing on this playing card, and yeah, it's very kind of like out there and psychedelic and like unreal, like surrealist in a sense, like almost like a painting that you're moving through in many ways. And you basically have 2 inputs. One of them is your analog stick moving left and right, and so you're kind of collecting hearts as you go along, and the idea is to like get a high score at the end. So you get different ranks. It will rank you gold, silver, or bronze, and obviously you're trying to shoot for the highest score possible basically by collecting the enough hearts and being on the right track the whole time. But then like it will switch things up where suddenly it's in a kind of side-on view, and there are these bikers who you're racing against, and they'll start attacking you with a sword, and you have to do timed button presses in order to like jump out the way and like attack them. So it's very, almost feels QTE-esque, but in a way that is to the beat, so it's also a rhythm game. Basically, it's really impossible to describe what this game is without you playing it, and I'm trying to do my best, but it's kind of just a visual overload of loads of different stuff with a bunch of music that kind of threads the needle through it, and I really liked it. I think I kind of started out being a little bit ambivalent about it, a little bit like, okay, yeah, we're just going forward on this track and we're collecting hearts, and every now and again I have to dodge out of the way of something or jump, and I was like, yeah, this seems cool, but I'm not really sure why everyone was so in love with it when it came out. And I think by the time you get to maybe like level 4 or 5, because I actually started off playing it handheld in bed one night, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. Only play the first 3 levels, just the first 5 minutes or so just to get into it. And then I sat down yesterday and just docked it and played it on my screen, headphones in. I put my big headphones on and was just like got really into it. And after that point, it really starts to open up what it does. Like there's one level where there's a VR kind of headset thing that you like go inside, and all of a sudden it's just like a first person view of almost like a classic PC game dungeon crawler, but you're moving up and down to like collect hearts in front of you, and then like you switch to this VR headset that this person is wearing, and you're this little head that's going around and collecting hearts like you're dodging bullets in a shmup. Like it changes gameplay styles so radically in a lot of different ways, and always adds like some new things. So sometimes you'll be riding on your motorcycle down a highway, and then there's this deer that pops up, this ethereal deer, and all of a sudden you're riding on this deer, and then this boss pops up. It's this giant 3-headed mechanical wolf, and so you're kind of like doing this pseudo boss fight as the music is going, as you're going through it, dodging out of the way of its attacks. Sometimes like your motorcycle just gets guns on the front of it, and all of a sudden it turns into a shooter as well. Like it really has that almost Nintendo quality of, here's a new idea, let's do it, then let's throw it away and let's not come back to it. And they actually do come back to a lot of the ideas near the end of the game. The culmination of it is a lot of those ideas just being put into one big level, where you're doing a lot of different things that you've done throughout it. And yeah, it just has a really distinct sense of style, and a great soundtrack that I don't think I would listen to outside of the game, but almost feels like a concept album in the same way that, Green Day did stuff like that. And a lot of, I would say it has more of I would say in terms of like a concept or like a sound, there's a Paramore album that I can't remember the name of. It's not their self-titled one. I think it's the one after their self-titled one that I actually liked quite a bit, but had this same sonic through line where a lot of the songs had the same vibe to them. And this is kind of what that is, where a lot of these songs have the same vibe all the way throughout, and you could almost play it as one contiguous piece of music, and it would just work. I believe actually after I finished the game, I unlocked album mode, which allows you to just play through everything uninterrupted, because one of the other things at the start, I was like, well, this level took me like 30 seconds, and then I have to go back to the main menu, and it like opens up the next level, and it like pops up the heart, and the heart explodes, and it's like, here's the next one. And I was like, well, why can't they just like flow into each other?
That's a weird choice for such a short game, actually, that you go back to that
it is. Later on it gets, because the game gets like quite intense in terms of like the amount of stuff you're dodging and moving about and things like that. I wouldn't say the game is hard particularly either. Like if you bump into something, it will just reset you to like that most recent area, so even within the levels it checkpoints really nicely, so it's very forgiving. But yeah, the later levels do get a little bit longer, so some of them are like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, so I'm like, okay, that makes a bit more sense, because you kind of do want a bit of a break at that point. I think it's just right at the very beginning where the levels are like 40 seconds long, and I'm like, well, couldn't I just roll into the next one almost? Which, yeah, but there is the album mode, which gets rid of that completely, and you just play the entire thing back to front. And I think that probably is a cool way to do it. I thought at the beginning I was going to be like, yeah, I'm going to go back and try and get higher scores, like get the gold rank on these, because I didn't get any gold ranks my entire way through my first playthrough. And I got to the end and I was like, all right, let's just try the first level again and see if I can do it. And I did manage to get a gold rank on the first level, tried it on the second level, and I was like, didn't quite manage it. So I can really see people who are super into the soundtrack and everything about it really getting into getting those high scores. But I think part of the thing that makes it tricky for me in terms of going back to it is everything happens so quickly, and some of the levels, because they are quite long, just remembering all the parts of the level and what comes after what and what you need to be moving towards to collect these hearts gets to be tricky, but also sometimes the analog stick and the controls are a little too sensitive, where there's a section sometimes where she's like falling down and you kind of have this top-down view and you see her falling into this space. And some of the hearts and collecting them I found to be a bit tricky because the movement on the analog stick when she was in those sections just felt like she moved a bit too much relative to how much I was moving the stick. So it felt like it was hard to be precise, I guess I would say. Like, precision is kind of tricky, and I think you need to be quite precise in a game like this in order to get those high scores. But that said, I think just the experience of playing it through once and like maybe jumping in again to see a couple more levels, just to kind of refresh myself, because I kind of took a break. I like played the first 3 and then a few days went by and then I played the rest of it. So it was nice to go back to the beginning again and be like, oh, they actually, like, you kind of start off with this skateboard at the beginning and it kind of pays that off at the end in a cool way. So yeah, I think it, like, is there a narrative to it? I guess this is more of one of those open to interpretation games where you're just kind of this person, this girl who has a skateboard, and then she just turns into this super lady who's going through space and riding on a motorcycle, and you're facing off other like motorcycle gangs and like other people, and there are boss fights, and it probably says something about the self and, you know, identity and things like that, I'm sure. But I didn't really read too much into it. I just kind of enjoyed the colors and the brightness and the sound, and yeah, it was just like a sonic experience. In some ways almost reminded me of The Artful Escape, you know, like a game that's kind of just like visual and audio just shoved into your eyeballs and your ear holes, you know, and just a fun, light gameplay experience that actually has a surprising amount of variety and kind of unique mechanics going on in it, which I thought was really cool.
Does it run nicely on Switch?
Runs really well, I should say. Yeah, definitely one of the better Switch ports. It runs at 60 FPS. When I was playing it on my bigger screen, the resolution was a slight bit lower, so you can tell a little bit of the jaggies here and there, but playing handheld is super smooth as well. Actually, one of those like games that you might expect to not be so great on the system, but fundamentally is really fast and fluid, and yeah, flows really nicely. So I highly recommend checking out the Switch version. Obviously, I think the eShop sale has finished now, so you won't be able to pick it up, but I'm sure they'll have another one over Christmas. And other couple of games I picked up were Super Meat Boy Forever and If Found, as well as Taiko Drum Master, Taiko no Tatsujin, the kind of rhythm drum game that I've been interested in for a while. So a few of those games lined up, and hopefully I'll talk about those in the new year when I have some more Switch stuff to check in with. So yeah, Sayonara Wild Hearts, pretty damn cool. Definitely recommend people check it out.
Nice.
Bally, you have been catching up a bit for Game of the Year stuff, playing a game that I have been telling you, you got to play this before we have our conversation.
Yeah. I am playing Unsighted on my Xbox Series X, but it's obviously on Switch as well. Mm-hmm. It's on Game Pass, I should also say. And yeah, it's one of what you've been saying a lot. I'm predicting it's going to be quite high on your Game of the Year list potentially. But
I like it a lot. Yeah, it will definitely appear probably.
I'm trying to play it ahead of next time. And I'm really early on still. I'm only on the second dungeon. And boy, this game throws a lot of systems at you very early on.
Yeah, it does.
You've got chips, you've got cogs, you've got crafting, you've got multiple types of weapons, you've got syringes to re-heal yourself. And then on top of all that, you've got the Unsighted system, which is like behind the title of the game. And I will admit I've turned that off because it feels like this game's already fairly difficult and I've got enough on my plate without having to worry about...
It's a lot of pressure, right? Like when you die, time ticks forward, and so because these characters are on a cycle of like they only have a certain amount of hours left in their life, if you get to a dungeon and you die on a boss like 6 or 7 times, you could be losing a lot of characters, right, and potential stuff going on, which I think part of the game wants you to lean into that. But I personally turned it off because I just don't like the time pressure. I think this is part of the reason neither of us have played Majora's Mask, because we just don't like the added pressure of time on a game where you want to be exploring and you know, just kind of taking your leisure almost.
And I don't mind it so much in a game like Pikmin, and I would argue that Pikmin is generally quite an easy game, especially when it comes to like the exploration side of it. And I actually
but also there's no like actual like end game timer. For Pikmin, it's more like you just need to extend the amount of time you have with the juice and stuff like that, right? So
it depends which game, but Pikmin 3, you're extending the amount of juice you have, and when you run out of juice, that's game over.
Yeah.
Pikmin 1 is defined as a limited 30 days no matter what.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah.
And then Pikmin 2, I actually think is an unlimited number of days. So they basically did a hybrid for Pikmin 3, which actually worked out really well.
I think it's the best, yeah.
Which is the best. So yeah, I've turned that system off in this game. I don't like and obviously Majora's Mask is a good comparison, but that kind of Zelda style game where you are exploring and there's a lot of collectibles in this game that you do want to just take at your own pace that I've been trying to go to at points, and I prefer a slower pace for that style of game.
Agreed.
I'm a really big fan of the chip system. It's almost identical to a system like the badge system in Hollow Knight or Ori Will of the Wisps. Like, I think it's just a really great thing that you can collect and just say, hey, I want to boost my attack, I want to boost my defense, and then potentially depending on the part of the game you're in, if it's for a boss or something, you might be like, right, I want extra attack on this boss, or maybe this boss is extra tough, I might want extra defense. So I love that ability to just swap up chips and paying for like more chip slots. And that is one thing that I do think is a tad overwhelming, is like money is limited, and I can appreciate that you can regenerate more money fairly quickly, but there's so many things to spend money on that I do always worry, like, am I spending money on the right thing? Because I'm using the sword, for example, and I've been spending money to upgrade my sword, but I'm scared that maybe later in the game I'll get a better sword or an axe or something better, and I want to spend my money upgrading that. Whereas I know that if I always upgrade to get more chip slots, I'm going to be using chips no matter what weapon I pick in the game.
Right,
so it feels like a safer investment than potentially investing in my sword. Like, did you stick with the sword for a while, Nbz, or did you swap up weapons? Or
I kind of tried out some of the other weapons. I did get the axe. I also bought the flame sword because I was like, that's a more powerful sword from one of the vendors. And
is it a slower sword, or?
It turns out it's much more powerful. However, I like swinging a bunch, and because stamina is also tied to how much you swing your weapon, the flame sword, you can only do 2 hits before you're almost out of stamina. So if you do 3 hits with the flame sword, you're like, okay, I'm slow now and I have to wait for it to recharge, which is not good and it's not what you want, right? So I used that for a bit, but I was like, no, the cadence of how I'm playing this game fits much more with a hit and run style, which is like chip, 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 dodge out the way, you know?
Yeah, lower risk, lower reward, I agree, is what I prefer with that type of game.
Right. And also, if you're using the parry system correctly, you're getting criticals, which means it's less important to have high DPS on your weapon, right?
Right.
So I did just stick with the main sword for most of the game. There is another weapon you will get later that is important to upgrade in a different way, but you'll understand that when you get there.
Right. So you just kept upgrading that sword.
I didn't realize I could upgrade it until quite late in the game. I was like maybe four dungeons in. I was like, oh shit, I should have been doing more attack power on this thing, because I have been just skating past without the high damage on it for a while, which maybe explained why I wasn't doing as much damage to enemies and bosses, but definitely worth doing.
Another quick question. I only currently have like 2 blueprints. Where do I buy more blueprints for cogs?
I think you can buy them from one of the shopkeeper people in the village. You can find blueprints, I think, in other places, and there are other people who sell them to you.
Right. I've been looking around the village and I can't find... I'll look that up, mate. But
there's only a few blueprints that I found useful in the sense that there were certain cogs that I always wanted to have. You always want to hang on to like at least one attack cog so that in a boss fight you can activate that. Yeah. I don't believe I ever got a revive blueprint, because those seem quite rare, and like... The revive one is basically like a bottle in Zelda with a fairy in it, right? Where if you die, or if you go to 0, it will just put you back up to full health, essentially. And I always kept one of those available. Defense cogs were really helpful as well. So I was mainly making attack and defense cogs, because if I ran out of them, I'd be like, okay, I'm going into a boss fight, I need to make at least 1 or 2 of these so that I have them ready, and then use them. I also used a syringe cog, which refilled your syringe if you just activated then deactivated it. And the thing that's interesting about the cogs is that you can hang on to them and you can activate them, and they have like a certain number of hits in them. So the attack cog gives you 20 hits with boosted attack, right? Or the defense cog lets you take 3 hits without taking any damage, right?
Really nice.
Which are really cool additions, and I appreciate that you can have those hanging out in your back pocket, and then when you want to use them, if you're in a particularly tough fight or if you're in a boss fight, you can just hit activate on them and they'll just be using them, and then if you want to go back to not using it and save it up, then you can turn it off and keep it for later. So really manageable and flexible system, I found.
Yeah.
Generally.
I'm finding the game generally pretty tough so far. And I actually think that once I get more chip slots and start upgrading and everything sort of synergizes even better, I think I will find it a bit easier. And I certainly found that with like Hollow Knight, actually, where once I felt comfortable with a few more badges, I felt that game got a bit easier. And because this feels like a fairly non-linear game, like they make it quite clear early on, oh yeah, you can do any dungeon in any order you want, but they also say, but here's our suggested order. And because I've been finding it quite difficult so far, I've decided to go with the suggested order, but maybe later in the game.
Yeah, I went with the suggested order as well.
Right. I might mix it up later, but my fear is that I just bump into enemies that are too powerful. But likewise, if they've balanced the enemies in a way, it might become easier.
Yeah, I'm also interested of like some dungeons might have certain items that you have only gotten from previous areas, because I do believe like there are certain, I've talked about the spinner, right? Like there's a spinner item in this game, and that's very well used in its own dungeon, but I do believe some later dungeons have spinner tracks in them, so and it might be mandatory to do those. So I'm not actually sure. Maybe they have designed it so that it's not mandatory and that you can do them in any order, because that's one of the problems that like Zelda has run into when it's done non-linearity before, and that's why Link Between Worlds was like, well, you can rent the items to get through this place and that type of thing. So but yeah, I don't know, have you got many items so far in terms of new abilities and stuff, and how are you finding that stuff? How many dungeons deep are you at the moment?
I'm only in the second dungeon, and I've not got the ability of the second dungeon yet. The ability of the first dungeon, I'm trying to even remember. Is it just the jump? Am I forgetting something?
It might be, yeah. I can't remember.
I don't think you necessarily even get, because I think you get that before you even get to the dungeon. So I don't think there's necessarily a distinct ability for that first dungeon. I've not reached the point in the game where I'm like, you know, Nbz is right. The dungeon design is just phenomenal and it's awesome. Like I thought the first dungeon was very good. I really enjoyed it. But it's not reaching that height yet, so I'm looking forward to these other dungeons to see.
Yeah, I think the second dungeon is where you get the spinner, and that's when things really, I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I think, you're probably getting there quite soon at this point.
But, you know, I'm really loving, like, the world, and like, the story's not bad, and I do really like all the systems, and, you know, even so far, I am like, God, why are more people not talking about this game? Because, like, it really is putting together a lot of things that people generally in the media, not just us, really appreciate. Like really good design that I've mentioned in games like Hollow Knight, you know, Ori Will of the Wisps. I know this isn't Metroidvania, but it has a lot of those styles of things in the game. And every year where so many people have talked about Death's Door, it's interesting that that gets so much limelight when it seems this one hasn't. So I'm really looking forward to it. Like in terms of, if I had to compare the first 2-3 hours of this to Death's Door, like it's kind of up there with it for me, and I really loved Death's Door. So like I'm really looking forward to the rest of this game, and we'll have much more to say about it next time, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to hear how you feel going forward, and you know, taking on those dungeons, and I think some of the later bosses as well are really fun and satisfying to fight.
Yeah, first boss was tough, but I beat it second time because I think first time I didn't go in using any cogs, and then second time I used all the cogs, and it was still tough with all my cog boosts, but I did it and it felt satisfying, and I got the counters in, and you know, read the room on how, like, looking out for like its what do you call it, like its signals for when it's going to use a move and stuff, and all that stuff was very satisfying, and I was really impressed.
For sure, yeah. I think for me the parry system really makes the combat stand out, because I don't think it's one of those where it's really hard to pull off. Like it's has a large enough window, but also like because enemies can come at you quite quickly, you always need to be ready to parry. So it's just having that ability and just making sure you're always cognizant of like, okay, maybe it's a good idea to just hang back and wait for this enemy to attack me, because then I'll get the parry in and the critical, and then they'll be done for. And certainly to do the big, it just feels really good to do the big damage on bosses, when I believe that first one's like a driller guy, right? And he like drills at you and
it's like the multiple heads.
Oh, that one, yes, but it also it does what one of the driller enemies does, which is it creates a path, like a red path, and you're like stand in the way of that path and hit the parry just as they're towards you.
I've noticed that a lot of enemies, they do that red path thing, and then you're like, right, stand in it and time it, and you're right, the window is a good amount of time that feels satisfying and earned.
Absolutely, yeah, really, really cool stuff. I'm really love that game, so glad to see you playing it, and hopefully we'll talk about it more on the next episode. as promised last time when we talked about Rystar and we didn't talk about Strider or Shinobi 3, ended up just going and playing those games because they're real short, and I thought I'll just bash through them. I think I mentioned last time that Strider was bad. Strider's not a very good video game. I didn't really enjoy it that much. It's really weird in that you're this ninja guy, and you're going through these levels, and sometimes like enemies will disappear and pop in and out, and like it does that kind of like flickering thing that NES games sometimes did, which makes it hard to like see things coming at you or like things being shot at you. But also it's really weird in the way he walks. Like there are curved surfaces or like angled surfaces, but he just stays like upright the whole time, and so he's like this upright model that just like kind of shifts across these like bends, and it just looks super weird when a guy is like right angled standing on a flat surface, like no gravity acting on him. He's just like standing there like it's nothing. So just like there's a weird awkwardness to the look of how he stands, and like I think it has that thing where you kill enough enemies and you like collect things and you boost how much damage you do with your sword, and so you can do like a longer attack with it. But man, it's just really hard because you get hit a lot and you die very quickly, and the enemies just like pile on screen. They keep spawning non-stop. And honestly, I probably should have played the game on easy, because one of the things I've noticed with a couple of these Genesis games is they actually have a difficulty setting. So Shinobi 3 I did play on easy, but Strider I was like, I'll just play this on normal and see how it goes. I have save states, I'll be fine. Should have just played it on easy, I think, because I think it probably would have been a much fairer experience and less full of bullshit, because I think what normal probably does is it takes less life, or you have less life, and also enemies probably spawn a bunch more and are just in more bullshit places. And yeah, there's some weird stuff that where sometimes gravity will switch and you'll be upside down, and you can also hang on ceilings, I think. Maybe I'm mixing this up with Shinobi 3. I did play them quite close together, and they're quite similar games. You're ninja in both of them and stuff like that, and you're using swords and stuff. But yeah, it has some okay levels. There's a weird boss that keeps occurring where there's this giant kind of orb in the middle, and you just keep swinging around it, and if you get into its orb of being swung around it, you have minimal chance to like attack it, and then if you don't do it in time, then it will drop you on the ground and you'll just take damage for no reason. It'll just be like, yes, we swung you around and you hit the floor, so now you're going to take a point of damage. I'm like, why? It just seems a bit of a bad design decision. Anyway, Strider, I don't recommend it. I don't think it's worth playing. I think, I just did it because I'm a masochist, and that's
ain't no Rystar.
No one close to how good Rystar is. Yeah, I'm glad that we didn't get Strider. It was very close in the poll. Strider was behind by at one point, and I don't think it would have been an interesting discussion, honestly.
Our Patreons saw sense, and they were like, we got to tip Rystar just over the edge, push it over the edge. That's the game that they'll enjoy playing.
Yeah. However, our patrons were also wrong because they didn't choose the best game of the three, which is in fact Shinobi 3 is the best game of the three. I did play on easy because I was like, I made that mistake with Strider. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And the game was much more forgiving and nice, and I didn't die as much, which was great. And I didn't have to use save states as much, which is great. So this is a side-scrolling ninja game where you play as much more of a kind of you throw, what do you call them, shurikens? Yeah, you throw shurikens. It's interesting, like contextual actions where basically you have your one attack button. However, if you are in different areas, it will do different things. So if you're further away from an enemy and you hit the attack button, you'll throw a shuriken, and you have like a limited number. So it says like 75 in the top corner. So you can only have a limited number of throws with your shuriken. However, if you're right next to an enemy, you'll pull out your sword and attack them instead. And if you're running towards... same button. And if you're running towards an enemy and you press the attack button, he does like a running attack with his sword. So it's a really interesting way to take the limited buttons that you had back in the day to create different attacks for the character. So, and I didn't realize this because I was starting off the game being like, oh, the only attack I have is these throwing shurikens. So for the first couple of levels, I was just staying away from enemies and just throwing my shurikens at them, and then inevitably I'd run out of them, and by the time I ran out, I was like, oh wait, I can actually hit them with a sword when I'm close to them. So then I realized, and I was like,
they weren't really into tutorials back then in the same
way.
No,
they weren't. Yeah, no. I mean, the thing is, and this is an important point to make, right, with these old games, is game manuals were much more important back in the day.
Very true.
So a lot of people would just read the game manual, which would tell you what the moves were and what you had to do in the game, and they didn't spend time tutorializing back then. That's just kind of what happened. So it makes sense in the context of the time. Obviously, going back to it now, it's like, I'm just going to press every button just to see what things do, right? But yes, there's a lot of interesting sequences that you go through in this game. There's one where you're on horseback and you're attacking people, which is a really cool thing. There's really nice like parallax scrolling in the background. There's one when you're on a surfboard. I think So there's a level in the Messenger where you're also doing this, and the Messenger obviously very ninja focused. You kind of look like the same character. I wonder if the Messenger took influence from Shinobi 3, because there is a level when you're on a surfboard, like going across the ocean and fighting dudes who are in the air on like hover packs, but also in the water on their kind of jet skis. And a lot of it, remember that level in Contra where we're like on bikes and we're like on rails, but like going behind cars and like jumping over cars and shooting them in front of you? Feels very much like that with that level when you're on the surfboard. The same idea of like they'll come from the front, but then they'll go behind you and you have to jump backwards over them so that they get in front of you so you can actually hit them. Kind of that design coming through, which I think a lot of games of the era did. And yeah, some fun boss fights that weren't too challenging. Enjoyed just kind of like mixing things up and learning the attack patterns, and nothing quite as bullshit as the final boss of Rystar either, so it just has a nice balance to it. And yeah, but obviously playing on easy helped to that effect. But you can also climb on ceilings and like kind of shimmy your way across. It's a little awkward sometimes when you're like going on pipes and stuff, because you have to hold the up button to hang on to a pipe. So sometimes you'll be jumping and there's a pipe above you, and so he won't automatically grab it. You have to be holding up in order for him to grab onto it. And so there's a little bit of finickiness with like moving left and right on the pipes and like jumping and grabbing new ones. But for the most part, I think it worked relatively well. And in moments where I fell off, I was like, that's fine, I'll just rewind and be back there. So again, the modern way to play these games, always the best way. Rewinding and save states and all that stuff just eliminates any frustration and just makes it a bit more playable. So Shinobi 3, I enjoyed a great deal. I think it's really fun. And if you're going to check out some games on the Genesis Switch Online service, it's one that I'd say is probably one of the better ones. I think probably Castlevania Bloodlines is my favorite that I've played of stuff on that service so far, but Shinobi 3 not far behind, and a really cool just aesthetic. Like I just like the ninja look and the kind of the way he moves and all that stuff. The animation is cool. So yeah, definitely a neat game that people should play if they want to. Cool. Yeah, that is going to do us for this segment of the show. We'll be back after the break with a big old section talking about all of our games of the year that didn't come out this year. So look forward to it, and we'll be back in a bit. All right, everyone, welcome back to the second half, the final part of today's show. It's time for a big beefy segment because we're about to talk about the top 10 games that we played this year that didn't come out this year. Someone, when they wrote in, put that into a acronym. Would you call it an acronym or is it an initialization? I think it's actually an initialization.
I think everyone says acronym, but it is actually wrong. I think you're
right. Because so here's the difference. Let's go in a nerdy conversation. I believe acronym is only when you can say it out loud. So like NASA would be an acronym because you say
it's got to have them vowels in the middle. Yeah,
you say it as if it's a word basically. Yeah. Versus an initialization, which is like the top 10 games that have come out this year, which someone wrote down, and I can't remember what it is. Well, I think someone's actually written it down. It's TTGOTY which when I saw that written out, I was like, we just need to use that now forever because it's the most absurd, ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
I've been trying to consistently use it in WhatsApp messages to you when we're discussing this segment. So yeah, I've been trying to keep up the brand.
Yeah. Bally refuses to write AAA as 3 A's, but we'll write this as this instead. Good times, fantastic. So yeah, we're gonna obviously the way this segment works usually is that we go through our top 10 games that didn't come out this year, back and forth, and we'll kind of count down and see what we have. But before that, obviously we asked you guys to write in with your games of the year that didn't come out this year, and we have quite a list. So we're gonna go through some of those, make some comments comments on them as we go along and see kind of the pulse of the community of different stuff everyone's been playing this year, because it's always nice to see that. So I'm going to kick it off. We have from Jackpot in Vancouver, Canada, who says number 5, he has Streets of Rage 4. Said, haven't played too many games in the genre, but very much enjoyed my time with Streets of Rage 4. Swapping between characters was fun, and I appreciate how the game honors the previous entries in the series, even though they aren't a game that I personally hold nostalgia for. Number 4, Operation Tango, which I want to bring up a point here. I believe this actually came out this year, so this might actually be not counting. But he says, a fun asymmetric co-op puzzle game. Totally recommend having a few drinks and playing this over a weekend with a friend. Just the right level of difficulty where each puzzle feels achievable without being a cakewalk. That's the other kind of co-op game of this year. Obviously, It Takes Two is the big one, but Operation Tango I've heard some good things about. I watched Nextlander play through that, which seemed pretty cool.
Need more co-op games.
Yeah, for sure. Number 3, he has Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Finally got around to this classic. I thoroughly enjoyed the game, although as a newcomer to Castlevania, I found it to be a bit cryptic in parts, e.g. the clock room. Killer soundtracks and fun boss fights, recommended wholeheartedly. Number 2, Dishonored. The wait for Deathloop to come to Game Pass caused me to look back at Dishonored and prep for next year. Dishonored has fun stealth with room for creativity. Interested to see how the sequel and Deathloop build upon it. And number 1, Persona 5 Royal. A better version of my favourite game of all time? No brainer. P5 rules, and you can't convince me otherwise. Not that either of you will try. No, I won't. Persona 5 is a game that I think has only got better with time as I've thought more and more about it. I think initially I was a little less hot on it than P4, just because some of the character moments I wasn't as big a fan of, but like the soundtrack in Persona 5 is untouchable. It's just astoundingly good. And yeah, I would like to play Royal at some point, but need to put aside an extra 120 hours for that. So take a little bit to get there. So fantastic. Bally, you've got the next one.
Our next list is from Luke. Says, hey lads, you asked for favourite games that you played that didn't actually come out this year, and mine come from 2011 and 2019 respectively. In Catherine from Atlas, and after 2 years of hoping and praying for a sale, I was finally able to pick up Link's Awakening remake that I couldn't put down and finished in 3 days. As always, love the pod, keep up the good work. Love, Luke from Eat Sleep Game.
Yeah, and Luke had a question as well that we'll probably tackle another time. But yeah, I appreciate those picks. Link's Awakening going on sale. Definitely one of those Nintendo things of, hey, we finally put this thing on sale for a whole 33% off. Can you imagine? only
Get it
only
now
paying,
while it's hot.
Yeah, £30 for a game. What amazing stuff. But yeah, love that game. That's fantastic.
It's a good game.
Next up, we have Albert, who says, yeah, Nbz and Bally, thank you for another year of wonderful entertainment. As 2021 draws to a close, I hope you find time for your loved ones and, of course, video games. And I believe it's Albert who starts by saying, here is my TTGOTY, number 10, Advance Wars. Can't believe I actually sat through the whole Sturm fight. Number 9, Box Boy. Love me some creative puzzling action. Number 8, Pushmo. I played 6 hours of this on my first day of getting this. Best 3DS eShop only game? Donkey Kong Country at number 7. Much preferred this to DKC Returns 3D and cannot believe how well it holds up. Number 6, Undertale. Somehow managed to go into this blind. That's a feat, I would say. Pretty hard to avoid Undertale stuff living on the internet. Number 5, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. Best co-op game me and my partner have played this year. Number 4, Link's Awakening Remake coming up again. I still find myself humming to the tunes of this. What a strange world. Number 3, Super Metroid. My introduction to Metroidvanias, and boy was it a good one. Number 2, Pikmin 3. This game is literally perfect. Number 1, Stardew Valley. I haven't been this addicted to a game loop in a long while. Amazing efforts for a single developer. I hope it's evident that you have been the main source of inspiration for my gaming efforts. Keep doing what you're doing and see you in 2022. Best wishes, Albert. Yeah, Albert, a hell of a list here of TNL favorites.
It's a very TNL list, that's like blast from the past on all those games, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent a lot of time talking about loads of those, amazing that Super Metroid is your first Metroidvania, and you just went for that one. That's really cool, especially given how prevalent the genre has become in recent years. So yeah, shout out to
next list is from Capsule J, who's from Georgia in the USA. It says, Dear Bally and Nbz, this year I played through 67 games with release dates ranging from 1993 to 2021. While a large percentage of these actually came out this year, I still played more than enough older games to have a set of top 10 games that didn't come out this year list. At number 10, Aglos, a rock-solid faux 8-bit Metroidvania that would fit right in with Wonder Boy or Shantae. Number 9, Style Savvy. It turns out that playing dress up is a lot of fun. Don't judge. Number 8, Star Wars Squadrons. I played through the whole campaign with a flight stick and throttle. I crashed pretty much every ship in the Rebel and Empire fleets and had a blast doing it. Number 7, Super Metroid. Until Dread, I think this was the best 2D Metroid. The level design and atmosphere were more than enough to offset the fiddly controls. Number 6, Ghost Sweeper Mikami. I had a smile on my face the entire time I played this charming Japanese-only SNES platformer. It's basically a more anime Castlevania, which is very much my jam. Number 5, Heart of the Woods. This visual novel that combines spooky mystery and romance made for a great late-night read. Number 4, Crimson Clover. I played nothing but shmups during the month of September, aka Shmuptember. This one was easily my favorite.
That's awesome. Like I've heard a lot of people do like certain gaming things for different months. Like Final Fantasy V Job Fiesta is definitely one of those, and I don't know what month that happens in, but Shmuptember is that's great. That's awesome.
Number 3, Manifold Garden. This surreal physics-bending first-person puzzler was an incredible experience. Just be wary that it is highly prone to causing motion sickness. Number 2, Ys 8. As of this year, I have now played through the entire Ys franchise. In terms of exploration, story, and characters, this is all around the best game in the series. It's also a great starting point for newcomers. Number 1, Crosscode. This game combines everything I like in a game into one package. Beautiful pixel art, a fun cast of characters, challenging combat, tricky puzzles, and an interesting world to explore. I spent over 70 hours with it, and I'm already looking forward into diving into the expansion. I'm excited to hear everyone else's lists.
Does that scare you, Bally, hearing that you spent 70 hours with Crosscode? Because I know you were interested in checking it out.
I mean, I only played like an hour and a half of Crosscode this year, and then just ran out of time, and other games came along that I needed to play, and I enjoyed what I'd played so far. I'm keen to jump into that game next year. I did not think it was quite that long. I knew it was like a 30, 40-hour game. And yeah, I'm willing to give it a go. A lot of praise about that game I've seen floating around. So, you know, I think it has potential that it could be a top tier game.
It was Capsule J's number 1, so yeah, high praise indeed. And yeah, I love this list for just like the deep cuts. Like, I'm gonna look up Ghost Sweeper Mikami because that sounds fucking cool. Also, I've never played a style savvy game, and I feel like it's one of those rare like Nintendo published things that we just have no idea about, and it always comes out, and I'm like, maybe I should just play. I know this is like a weird dress up fashion game and probably isn't targeted towards us at all. However, I would like to play a style savvy game at some point in my life, so I'll probably seek that out eventually. I'm sure there's some good ones on 3DS that we can have a look at. Our next list is from Tim, who said, since getting my Series S and Game Pass last November, I've had the opportunity to try/play way more games this year than any year prior. Normally, I might only buy and play 10 to 15 new games, mostly on Switch, with maybe a Steam game here or there. This year, I played 32, only 3 on Switch, 2 on Steam, and 27 on Game Pass. I couldn't limit it to 5 this year, so instead I have a top 10. For the sake of brevity, I'll only elaborate on the top game, since it is by far the best game I played this year. Here's the list. Number 10, Haven. Number 9, What Remains of Edith Finch. Number 8, A Short Hike. Number 7, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Number 6, Dicey Dungeons. Number 5, Monster Sanctuary. Number 4, Star Wars Battlefront 2 from 2017. Number 3, Octopath Traveler. Number 2, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And number 1, Outer Wilds. Wow, no other game has reached this level of genuine exploration and wonder. So many discoveries to find and mysteries to unravel. This is one of only 2 games this year, the other is my 2021 GOTY, that I couldn't stop thinking about even when I wasn't playing and couldn't wait to get back to. Simply an incredible game. And yeah, I think a lot of people have that thought about Outer Wilds. Definitely a game I would love to try, but I think it would just make me wildly motion sick. And having watched videos of it, I think that's the case. So it's a shame that I'll never really be able to enjoy that, probably. But there you go. Some cool stuff on there. I know we want to both get to Dicey Dungeons next year. I'd love to play that. Someone at work was talking about that recently and was like, it's great, you should play it. And I was like, yes, I will play it at some point. And Haven as well, a shout out to that, because I really enjoyed that last year, and I think it's one of those games that got a little bit swept under the rug. So yeah, great giving that some love.
Octopath Traveler, gotta get that in there.
Yep, number 3. Yep.
And yeah, Jedi Fallen Order, absolutely loved that game. Such a strong game. Our next list is from Maitreya, who has number 10, Gorogoa, number 9, The Gardens Between, number 8, Cave Story, number 7, Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright, number 6, Super Mario 3D World, and then following comment, favorite Mario level design, but wow, after playing Odyssey, the movement options feel limiting. Number 5, Persona 5 Royal. It's P5 but add quality of life updates and undoubtedly the best villain in the game. It's wonderful, the best way to enjoy an already great JRPG, but is it essential playing to those who enjoyed the original? I'd say no. Number 4, Final Fantasy VII Remake. My first ever Final Fantasy, and it left a great impression. Just an all-around good JRPG. Looking forward, my suggestion would be to make Tifa the only playable character, as she's 10 times more fun than anyone else. Second best game in 2020 behind... Number 3, Hades. The best praise I can give Hades, or to give it its full name, its full title, motherfucking Hades.
I wonder if that's a reference to me.
Probably. It's really not my type of game. Yeah, I couldn't put it down. I just wish the character stories didn't progress at a snail's pace. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. It's not my type of game, but I loved it. Number 2, AI the Somnium.
Come on, Bal, get the anime games right.
Number 2, AI the Somnium Files. Really interesting mystery. Lots of hilarious moments and an incredible cast who are fully voice acted by a very good cast. A fantastic adventure, and I can't wait for the sequel next year. Number 1, Nier Automata is not a perfect game. In fact, I think it has several flaws. But what it does right, it does so right. The story and main characters are excellent, but it's more what it says about humanity, philosophy, religion that makes it an amazing piece of art. Add in a top 5 OST and ending, which genuinely might be my favorite moment in any game ever. Then you have a worthy number 1.
Fantastic, yeah. Some really bangers in here. Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright. Gora Go. I mean, Gora Go is a bit too low down the list. Should be higher, but you know.
I mean, you got the better puzzle game above it in the Gardens Between, so it's
for sure.
It's a fitting list.
AI the Somnium Files is on Game Pass now, and I have it downloaded, and I am excited to dive into that because it seems like my shit. And also, Tifa is the best, but also you should play the DLC if you don't have a PS5 yet. I understand, but like Yuffie's fantastic. Yuffie might be my second favorite character, combat-wise, in Final Fantasy VII now, having played that DLC. So fantastic.
This Nier Automata story is speaking to me, and I need to try it at some point.
Man, that game is like, boy. It's you need to watch like 7 video essays once you've played that game. That was my experience anyway. But yeah, it's great. It's flawed, but it's also very good. So yeah. So we have a final list here from Chris B, who wrote in, and let's go down from 10 to 1. So number 10, Streets of Rage 3D. Number 9, Pokemon Ultra Sun. Number 8, Asphalt 3D. Number 7, Hey Pikmin. Number 6, Fire Emblem Fates Conquest. Number 5, New Super Mario Bros. 2. Number 4, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Dual Destinies. Number 3, 999, which is 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. 999. Number 2 is F-Zero GP Legend. And number 1, Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth. It's a very 3DS focused list, basically all 3DS games, if not everything. And he says all of these games are good and definitely worth playing. Persona took me basically the whole year on and off, but was really fun. The music was really cool, and I can tell that I'll feel very nostalgic for Persona Q in years to come. My first foray into the series did not disappoint. Overall, quite a few longer games this year, so I'm surprised that I got through them all. I plan to continue delving into the DS and 3DS libraries in 2022 in an attempt to catch up on a bunch more things that I missed out on. The backlog is still miles long, and ain't that the truth? No matter how many old games we play, Bally, the backlog still continues to grow and never end.
There's still a never-ending trail of just high quality games that just need played. You know, like it just
for sure.
never ends.
Yeah, I will never play every game I want to in my entire life. That's a sad fact of it, but, you know, it's cool. It means I can...
Us in that retirement home just trying to churn out just
I'll get there, but we'll sit in there next to each other and be like, all right, let's get through It Takes Two 7 now, you know. Yeah. Faris has died and his son made this new game. We've got to get through it, so, you know, that's going to be us. Awesome. Cool list there. Thanks everybody for writing in. Great fun to see the community's thoughts and a wide variety of stuff, introducing me to some stuff I never heard of before. Nice to see some stuff that the podcast has influenced people playing and things like that. So
it's quite hard to play a game that Nbz's never actually heard of these days. He's pretty widely read on these things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, shout out to Capsule J going to the deep depths of Japanese only SNES platformers.
There we go.
Look, that's my jam. I appreciate it. Also, I want to shout out, I would like to play an Ys game, and him giving Ys 8 the kind of nod there and saying it's a good starting point for newcomers. Probably we'll check that out at some point. So yeah, that's great. Fantastic. All right, Bally, you ready? Are you ready to jump into our actual lists? So, rules here. Basically, there aren't any rules, but there are rules. The rules are the game had to not release in the year 2021. It has to be an old game. And we both have an ordered list of 10 to 1. And we will go back and forth saying our number 10, then our number 9, then our number 8.
Lists, yeah.
I don't think we've done in the past the thing where it's like, oh, I have this, and then the other person is like, well, it's on my list, but later. I don't know if you want to do that or not, because I don't know if we'll have.
No, we just have a little chat about it each time and talk twice because it's our own thoughts, I guess. But
yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's kind of how it will work, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the rules, and you can kind of make your list however you want. Sometimes people cheat. It wouldn't be me. I'd never cheat, of course not. But I
was so close to doing a big cheating thing, and I was like, nope. I'm gonna keep it kosher. It's all gonna be real, and so I've kept it legit.
Well, you're the pure one here, Bally, because I certainly have cheated, and you'll understand why when we get there. But it'll be fun. Then. It'll be a good ride. So, yeah, let's start off. Bally, do you want to kick us off with your number 10 game that didn't come out this year?
Okay, this was a big NBZ recommendation, and that is Mark of the Ninja.
Hell fucking yes.
I've been meaning to play this a while. It was on sale, and then I got the standard message from NBZ on WhatsApp like, this game you should play is on sale. You need to buy it. I'm like, okay, right. So I bought it, and then months later, I start playing it, and I thought, this is a very old indie game. It surely cannot live up to some of the incredible indie games of the last few years, and it really does. It must be one of the highest quality early indie games because it was out initially way back in 2012, 2013.
Yes, you came around to my house and I showed it to you on my then brand new PC that I had got, and I was like, look at this game I got on Steam. It's a ninja game. It's cool.
Look at this incredibly high powered PC I got to play this 2D platforming.
It is ironic that a lot of the first games I played were oh, here's the side scrolling platformer that doesn't require this power.
Which there were a ton of on PC back in the day, to be fair.
Oh, loads, yeah.
So it's just an incredibly high quality stealth action 2D game, and if you want to do stealth 2D, I don't think you can probably do it much better, and being able to play as a ninja.
Yeah, I've never seen an attempt that has been done as well. I think my two favorite stealth games, I've said many times, one is Metal Gear Solid 5 for 3D games, and the other is Mark of the Ninja for 2D games. And I think both of them are perfect in exactly what they want to achieve. But Mark of the Ninja is just it's beautiful. Just because I think a lot of it is how much information the game gives you of sound windows, of the way they represent it with the circles and the bubbles going out, and seeing enemy sight lines and all that sort of stuff is just really smart.
Really cool stuff. I would highly, highly recommend it. It's obviously on lots of consoles, including the Nintendo Switch. Yeah, go play Mark of the Ninja. Great game. That's my number 10.
Very nice. My number 10 is a game that we revisited or visited for the first time this year that is a lot of people's favorite. And we did a backlog club on it. It's Paper Mario. The original Paper Mario comes in at number 10. I had a great time going back to this. I think it's, obviously I've played a bunch of Mario RPGs in the past. Ironically, I think you would say that maybe I've played the worst ones, given the common consensus.
Is this one of the better ones then? This is up near the top or...
So I've always enjoyed the ones that I've played, but if you talk about a community consensus of what are good games of the Mario and Luigi series, I've played number 2 and number 4, widely considered the worst of the series, right? Whereas number 1 and number 3 are considered the better ones. Or I've played Paper Mario Sticker Star and obviously Origami King that came out. So the games that I've chosen to play within the Mario RPG realm have never been the ones that most people enjoy. But I think Paper Mario is probably the best summation of a cool idea that Nintendo had that just felt new and different at the time, right? Much more of a narrative focus, really funny writing and cool scenarios, and just taking these familiar Mario elements and subverting them, and having all these different companions that you go along with, and just a cool kind of take on the Mushroom Kingdom where you go to familiar places, but they're populated by different characters. I think my favorite section of that game is the murder mystery in the snowy mountains with the penguin and the writer guy, and it's a whole different section of the game that feels unique and something from the time that I wouldn't have expected. Mixing in the stuff of going and playing as Princess Peach in the castle and doing the little stealth missions with her. I think there's so much to love about this game, and even the combat is engaging and brings a level of oh, how should I level up? Should I focus on my health? Should I focus on these other elements? And I probably would have preferred a better way to play it than the Wii U, just because I think N64 emulation isn't great on there. But it was great to have the save states. I think this game is eventually going to come to the Switch Online service, which will probably be a much better way to play it for most people. But yeah, I think a lot of people in our community are big Paper Mario fans, and it was great to finally play this and really see what everyone was talking about. Obviously, I knew a lot of it because I had watched a Let's Play, because, of course, what old Nintendo game have I not watched a Let's Play of? But it had been a long time, and yeah, it was great to play it myself, and I think it's one of those things that when you actually play something, it sticks in your memory a bit more, even for all its flaws as well, which I think it does have sections that drag a little bit. I think of like the Toy Town section where you're going into the box and there's the big...
it's a bit fetch questy at points.
Yeah, the big fat Goomba, and like you have to feed him a thing and go and cook. Like the cooking stuff was fun as well, you know. Yeah, great characterization and just a really unique idea that Nintendo had that has now, you know, it's getting there. Paper Mario's coming back to where it was, but I think still people are wishing for the series to go back to what it was like with the original game. And I think the original game, still excellent, still great and fun to go back to. So it's my number 10, Paper Mario.
Totally understand now why people were so keen on that kind of mechanic system now. I get it. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 9 is Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair.
Do you want to tag team? Because this is also my number 9.
Wow.
We both put it at number 9.
I'm impressed that it's at exactly the same point.
Yeah.
We love a bit of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And
for sure.
This game's obviously not quite to that level, but it really isn't quite as far off as I had estimated it would be going in. Like, as the more I played this game, the more I realized this level design is actually really impressive, and like the mechanically, that evolution we've talked about with your standard Donkey Kong level, it has a lot of that on top of a great soundtrack and just a really like nice, colorful, interesting world. Like, I think this game really has that, and I think the overworld is actually very interesting. I think the final gauntlet, the Impossible Lair itself, is maybe a little bit overkill, and I think I said at the time, I
think that's the thing that drags it down a little bit for me, because I'm definitely with you of like,
I think it should be a post-credits bonus thing. It doesn't need to be part of the intrinsic main game, I'd say.
Or at least have a version of the Impossible Lair that's like a bit more along the lines of difficulty that the rest of the game was, right?
And
like,
I mean, it has already been nerfed, but needs nerfed again, perhaps. But,
I would have preferred it if there was like a kind of, okay, here's a smaller, more condensed version of it that's like the possible lair, which I think they do call it, the one that you can actually get through.
That would be so fitting for the comedy of this game as well, to call it the possible lair and to have that thing. But if you want to do Impossible Lair, it's something different. That'd be fun.
It feels like the sort of thing that should be a bonus endgame extra for masochists, and it's actually the way you have to finish the game, which, you know, it didn't actually take me that long when it came down to it. It maybe took me 10 tries or something, which was a lot less than I expected.
It wasn't awful, but it was tough.
Yeah, it was tough. But I think the reason this game gets on the list, even if I didn't like... There's certain games I left off this list that I maybe enjoyed overall a bit more, but like, I think the nice thing about this was I was really surprised by it. Like, I didn't expect this game to be good, and I think that's partly because the original Yooka-Laylee that came out seemed quite disappointing in terms of it was trying to be this 3D platformer, it was trying to do the Banjo-Kazooie thing, and from fans of those games, it seemed like they didn't really like it, and it felt a bit jank. And
fantastic decision to go 2D after that. Great
Absolutely,
idea.
Yeah. And like, it's definitely, you can feel the budget, like in terms of like, it's a little low budget with like the feathers being almost 2D assets and stuff like that, and like some of the levels kind of not looking as polished maybe as you would expect, but the core aspect of it is the feel. And I think the feel of this game, when it comes to the platforming and the rolling and jumping and all that stuff, feels really, really good and very close to what you would want from a Donkey Kong style platformer, right? And like,
totally.
The history of Playtonic is that, you know, previous Rare people, so, you know, they're kind of going back to their history with Yooka-Laylee trying to be Banjo-Kazooie, and this game really is trying to be Donkey Kong Country, right? It's just calling back to that history of theirs. And I think, honestly, they pulled off a really good attempt, right? You're not going to get close to Tropical Freeze. That game is just like, it's too good, right? It doesn't deserve to be that good. But for the attempt here, for trying something that they're going almost trying to reach for the stars. I think they did a really admirable job of it, and I really enjoyed playing it a lot more than I expected. And also, I actually really like the overworld puzzles. Like, that's one of the elements that I didn't expect to be a fan of, but it was great going into a new area and being like, okay, I'm not going to play any of the levels just yet. I'm going to go and figure out all the overworld puzzles, and then I'll go and play all the levels. And I thought that was a really nice kind of pace changer, right? Because it's not just going from platforming level to platforming level. It's switching things up. And I thought it was a unique idea that I've not really seen done before.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Awesome game.
I like it a lot. Ukulele and the Impossible there. Definitely worth checking out. A great game.
I guess I'll come in then with my number 8.
Yeah, go for it.
Is Katana Zero.
Nice.
Another game on the list of Bally, you got to play this game, says Nbz. And it was on Game Pass. I played it.
Hey, look, I'm right, motherfucker. Two of those games were on this list.
Yes.
Stand by.
This game is so cool. It's just so... It feels so good to like play as like this samurai style character with your sword and be able to slow down time and deflect bullets. It is like the 2D Jedi lightsaber game you've always been dreaming of, but obviously isn't Star Wars and Jedi themed, but it is just so good mechanically, so mechanically sound, and even has like really nice pixel art and a pretty interesting story actually. Like it's just great.
I'd say, like, if Eastwood didn't exist, Katana Zero is my pick for best pixel art in a game.
That's a really good shout.
I honestly think it's stunning stuff. Like, especially with some of the lighting they do. Like, it's just the cyberpunk setting of it all, of this weird, like, bathrobe ninja rolling around, this juxtaposition that works super well.
This is like futuristic cyberpunky ninja style world, and the lighting just works so well, and there's all these like gangster bosses, and there's some really graphic like stabbing and pixelated blood and like this. It's just a really nice, neat little world, and then to have these incredibly solid mechanics to back up all the fighting. It's awesome, and it feels so good when you absolutely get it right. And I think the game has a really nice difficulty curve that just gradually gets there. I don't think the ending is completely slap you across the face difficult. It's just kind of like that level of difficulty that is just the right amount of satisfaction you want with that challenge as you approach the end of the game. And it's pretty short. It's like 5 to 6 hours long. Nice short campaign, which is always nice, and it doesn't overstay its welcome.
If I had any critique of it, I would say that like it is a little too short and that it doesn't really resolve a plot that you kind of want it to.
Plot, lengthwise, I like the length, but I agree with you. The plot is left on a bit of a cliffhanger, and I really hope there's a nice, satisfying sequel. But we'll see.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, number 8, Katana Zero, great game.
Yeah, I want to see what that guy is hopefully making a sequel to Katana Zero. But yeah, that game is incredible, and I think one of the cool things about it is also the not rewind, but like when you finish a room, you get to watch it in full speed.
Replay, so good.
And seeing yourself reflect bullets in real time is also... Also, the best feeling in that game is not having to use the slow down time thing and reflecting the bullet anyway. Like, I pulled that off a couple of times, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm cool. I'm just the baddest ass. It's so good. So, yes, great game. All right, my number 8, time for some rule breaking. My number 8 is... It's Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. Now look, I hear you.
Okay.
You said it come out this year. Sure. It's an old fucking game.
At least you're not fighting for it on like the other list, I guess.
No,
this is allowed. That's fine.
Look, it's an old game, all right?
It's an old game.
They added some stuff, but all the stuff in it is old game stuff, right? So I'm going to count it as an old game. Obviously, I grew up playing Super Monkey Ball, mainly Super Monkey Ball 2, and it was a weird feeling when I went into the single player, and I was expecting like stuff I didn't recognize, because I expected the single player to just be Monkey Ball 1 stuff, and then realizing, oh wait, like the way they've structured this is super weird in that the main campaign is actually Monkey Ball 2's campaign, and like Monkey Ball 1's campaign is actually one of these challenge levels, and it was a little bit of a weird setup. I've talked about that before, but what a joy. I just fucking love Super Monkey Ball. It's such a fun, like, knock your head against a wall experience of, here's a hard level. Just keep doing it, man. Just keep doing it and dying and figuring out what you did wrong, and is there a way to get past this? And the level design is just all over the fucking place. There's no consistency whatsoever. Like, it feels like we just threw these randomly in here. Some of them, like, are just going to take you 2 hours, and then the next one will take you your first try, right? Like, there's just no difficulty curve whatsoever, but I absolutely love it. Like, there's something about getting stuck on a Monkey Ball level that just flames that fire within me of like, no, you're not going to get me. I'm going to fucking finish this level and I'll show you. It's a game that when I was younger, I never was able to finish. And finally, when I did get past that level that I got stuck on as a kid, I was like, I can do this, man. I can go through all these and finish it. And I did. I managed to beat all the stuff in the Monkey Ball 2.
So satisfying knowing your skills have improved,
Yeah, for sure.
In a really tangible way.
I hear a lot of people on podcasts being like, when I was a kid, I was way better at video games. I could beat the original Legend of Zelda with my eyes closed upside down backwards, right? And I think we were just a bit shit as kids at video games.
But you wait till we're in like our late 30s and our our muscles will slowly atrophy. They just have to atrophy that little bit, and it can really affect some of these games we're talking about. I'm a bit nervous about that, but we're not there yet.
A little bit, but we'll get there. It's fine. We still got a good few years in us, right? We're fine.
Yeah. And then will you just be stuck on turn-based JRPGs or whatever?
That Bally, this is it. When you're 60, that's when I'm going to get you deep into JRPGs. It's happening. We'll count on it. Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, obviously a great package and a great way to revisit these old games, but like, it just shows how well they hold up. It just reminds me of like, okay, yeah, there were other Monkey Ball games that came out after these, but really they were kind of shit, and like they felt like they handheld you, and like, not to be a hardcore gamer about it, but like, I like when Monkey Ball is hard, and I think Monkey Ball is inherently less interesting when it's easy. And I think that was the problem with a lot of the subsequent games, is that they tried to just be a bit too easy, and in that case just got rid of that feeling that I loved, which was overcoming the challenge.
It's weird because they are like these cute cuddly monkeys who obviously appeal to a much younger demographic, but then parents will buy their kids this game that just completely beats them up and they're like can't beat a single level.
Yeah, I wonder if that was part of the thinking of like, look, man, this is we should be appealing to the youth, and make sure we have some rails on the side so they don't fall off. It's almost like the bowling alley of like Monkey Ball 1 is like no fucking rails, you can't bounce off the side. Whereas all the ones subsequent were like, you can maybe bounce around here and make your way up slowly and get to the top. And not to denigrate that, if you find Monkey Ball hard, I totally get it, right? It's a difficult game, and there are plenty of genres that I find very hard, and I'm not going to play SMT5 because that seems like a punch to the dick of a JRPG, right? Like I don't want to go through that experience, right? But for certain genres, for certain games, I do like the challenge, and Monkey Ball is one of those, and I think Banana Mania hits it out of the park when it comes to just revisiting those levels and just getting the full package of all the best Monkey Ball stuff. And they've done remakes before of like, hey, Crash Bandicoot came back and they did a new game for that. Like, does this mean that Sega will do a new Monkey Ball in the style of these old ones? A man can dream, but ultimately, like, I don't think they can really recapture what they had with this series, just because it just feels almost like a Wild West of level design that I just don't think modern game design would adhere to. Like, it's almost too chaotic for what you would make today. But I'm glad it exists, and I had a ball, pun totally intended, playing through this game again. So, number 8, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania.
Awesome. Right, I think I'm on to my number 7, which is Halo 3. For those that may not be subscribed to our non-Tendo podcast, I've actually been playing every single Halo campaign in existence in the last 2 years since getting an Xbox, and I've successfully beaten all 7 games ahead of Halo Infinite coming out. Well, the campaign's coming out in just a few days, and I've got a good take on every single Halo game, having played them all in such a short period of time. And Halo 3, alongside Halo Reach is very good too, but Halo 3 is just that extra, je ne sais quoi of Halo, like it's just that extra level, that extra, all the things that you love the most about Halo 1 when it comes to those first missions on the Halo where you're going from point to point, clearing out a Covenant base and then moving on to the next point. And like that's kind of a lot of the reasons people seem to be loving from reviews, like the earlier missions in Halo Infinite, like that campaign. And I think Halo 3 does a great job with a few levels in that game where they get you to do that point to point, Covenant base to Covenant base, but each base they progress it in terms of using different vehicles to get to the next base. And I just think it's the best game for variety and mixing up the vehicles you're in. Not to mention, I think plot-wise, it is the strongest Halo has ever been. Maybe Infinite might change that, I don't know. But Halo 3 is my favorite plot and has the most epic ending that I love so much, that plays on the ending from the first game. And I thought it was a fantastic game. It's got one of the worst levels in any Halo game ever in Cortana. That name of level is Cortana, I should say, and I cannot defend that level at all, but I have been really enjoying Halo campaigns, and I don't think a Halo game got onto my list last year, but this year I think Halo 3 deserves to sneak in at number 7 because it's such a great game, and I had a great time with it.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I know you've been really enjoying playing through these. Like, you seem to take them as like kind of bite-sized experience of like every day you play a mission, and that's been like the way you go through.
Yeah, they're really good. Just like a lot of the missions are sort of 20 minutes to 40 minutes long, and it's just like pick up, play a mission, put it down again, come back, and just after a week you beat another Halo campaign. It's pretty. I find them very comfortable to play as well. Like I play them on normal. And other than the first Halo, which I think is probably the hardest on normal out of the bunch, I think a lot of them are fairly manageable, which is good. So Halo,
for sure,
would highly recommend.
Yeah, and I'm sure like the culmination of the story from 1 and 2, like finishing in 3, probably I'm sure has an impact as well.
Right. I mean, 2 was cut in half, and they put the other half as Halo 3, right? So like that 2 finishes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big like cliffhanger ending thing that they did with 2 that a lot of people weren't a fan of. But the nice thing about time is that you don't have to worry anymore. You just went straight from 2 into 3, so like that helped, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I thought it was just such a cool ending in a very kind of Star Warsy sci-fi kind of way, and I thought it was awesome. So, Halo 3.
It's great. I'm looking forward to playing some Infinite, man, when that comes.
That'll be good. That multiplayer.
So my number 7 is a game I think will probably end up a bit higher up your list, but still good for me and still an amazing game. Batman Arkham Asylum is my number 7 game. This is probably the game I have started the most in my life and not followed through with.
Scary game. Can't deny it's a scary
partially
game.
Because of that. Like, it's the reason both of us have like played a bunch of Control, but like have never got deeper into it. Like, I will play Control all the way through at some point, but we're just we're scaredy cats, as everyone knows. If you listen to the show, if we're scared of Batman Arkham Asylum, that's like a 10-year-old game that like still looks great, I think, but still.
Hey, look, we beat Last of Us Part 2. We can handle these big board games.
I know. Oh boy, I don't want to think about that anymore. It's scary. But Batman Arkham Asylum is one of those games that I think, in terms of level design and like idea and like just genre, like the Metroidvania in 3D concept, taken to a really cool place that obviously Metroid Prime did a lot with, and there have not been many games that have nailed it this well. And I think part of it is the combat system is really fluid and fun. There are some great set pieces with different bosses, like I think of the Croc fight that is totally different to anything else in the game. I think the Riddler trophies and the Riddler kind of puzzles are fun to figure out every now and again. Like, you find some interesting lore and pieces of information. Probably my favorite implementation, because everyone knows I hate audio diaries in games. Like, they drive me up the wall. I think they just don't make sense in the world. Whereas like this is one of the few games where it makes total sense in the world, and they're also some of the best audio diaries I've ever heard.
Really great voice acting. Yeah.
Like, really solid performances from everyone across the board. The Scarecrow levels are just like creepy and crazy and Captain Toad-esque in their design, even though this game came way before Captain Toad, but that's what I always associate them with.
I mean, Miyamoto had played Batman Arkham Asylum and thought, we've got to do this. Yeah,
this is the story. Miyamoto, he went to the woods in a Batman costume and found a cylindrical pillar and was like, what if I walk around this? And then the idea for Captain Toad spawned from his head, of course. We all know the story. But Batman Arkham Asylum, I still think, holds up, and I'm interested to play the others, but I have this feeling that this is going to be the one that will stick with me the best, just because it's very focused in its design, and I tend to like that a lot more than open games, especially open world games of the mid-2000s, 2010s, I guess, which is what the other games are. And I'm sure they hold up great, but like there's something about the tightness of it. Like, it's not super long, and it gets in, gets out. Like, also like the island and how it changes as you go through, like with Poison Ivy doing stuff to it, and like just the space evolving, I think, is a really cool aspect of this game, especially stuff like when your cape gets a hole in it. You just keep that hole for the rest of the time that you're playing the game, right? Like, it's just permanent.
The whole game is in one night. The whole game takes place. Very cool.
And yeah, it's just a really well-made thing that I think holds up incredibly well. And probably only a bit lower down this list because it is a little scary, and I'm just not very comfortable playing those games. So, I enjoyed it a great deal, though. Excellent game. Batman Arkham Asylum, my number 7.
My number 6 is Art of Rally. Or it might be The Art of Rally. I think it's just Art of Rally.
I think it's just Art of Rally. Yeah.
I've been really loving driving games since getting back into Forza with Game Pass and Xbox and all these things. And for a game like Art of Rally to come onto Game Pass, it was on PC, I think it came out last year, but it came onto Xbox, came onto Game Pass, it's also on Switch, and it takes what I love about driving games and breaks it down into the most simplistic aspects. Like, they don't have official cars or anything in this game, and they're kind of spoofing on some classic rally cars. And I love that, because I think that this game it takes every year since rally started back in the mid-70s, I want to say, and then you play campaigns through every year across places like Japan, Germany, the UK. There's like a Kenyan track as well. Like, there's just all these courses. And I don't know if the courses are, what's the word, like computer generated or not, like
procedural
generated or not. It's hard to tell, but either way, they're fantastic courses, and just it really breaks down to this art style that is so simplistic and very like.
It's clean, man.
It's
like
clean.
I look at that game and I'm like, wow, it's got a real style to it, and also like it's isometric perspective, right? And so you get that kind of like overhead look of the track and where you're going.
And the camera's really nicely zoomed back, so you really get a feel for the landscape around you, which is always nice, because a lot of rally games, they do feel a bit claustrophobic and
especially because
hardcore.
usually you're in first person inside the cockpit, right?
Yeah, that as well. And like, just to be third person with the camera right back, enjoying the sights, enjoying the view, it feels a lot better pace. And I absolutely love this game. It's so relaxed. It's not got like a rewind like you can in Forza, but I always manage to correct myself and manage to still get on the podium.
It's too much of a pro.
Too much of a pro. Yeah. And the game can be hard, but I think it's a really good balance. It was exactly the right difficulty for me personally, and I love that. And it was just my podcast game for a good, I think I gradually played this over the course of like 4 or 6 weeks or something. Like, it was just a really nice chilled game in the background. And if you're into like rally games, driving games at all, this is just a really nice, easy, chilled one. It's not easy, but it's a chilled rally game, which I've not felt about other rally games that I've tried. It's just got that, it's got a Forza energy without in a relaxing way, which I think is great. It's just such a great game.
It's a Bally-ass Bally pick, I'll tell you. Like,
it should be called Art of Bally.
Yes, of course. Yes. I don't know how I never did that. I think someone mentioned that in the Discord at one point, actually.
Perhaps. It was just sitting in my mind somewhere.
I need to make a new emote that is Art of Bally and just use that on the server. So
it's an award for the best of best driving games.
Of course, yeah, of course. A game that I will never play and I'm sure is fantastic, but is very much Bally's wheelhouse. And that's great. Awesome. Glad to see you enjoyed that a lot. My number 6 is Assemble with Care. So this is a game that really surprised me, actually. It's from the people who made Monument Valley, and it came out on Apple Arcade a while ago, and then it came to Steam, I think, maybe last year or something. And I picked it up in the sale, and I was surprised it wasn't on Switch, honestly, because I think this game fits Switch to a T just because of the way it works, and the touchscreen would be really nice with it, because I played with mouse and keyboard, obviously, and the mouse works really nicely because essentially it's a story about this girl who visits this town, and she's left her parents, and she's kind of fixing relationships in the town while she also fixes things, because she's like into engineering and stuff like that, and she kind of moonlights as someone who like fixes stuff like cameras and just different objects, basically everyday objects. And a lot of the game is this mix of storytelling told with like really good voice acting and like panels of art. And then you're in this section where you take things apart, like taking out the screws, putting them on the side, and like lifting off broken things and replacing them. And there's this real kind of like calm to it, and this enjoyment of just removing something. It's almost like a corruption that you're like taking out and like putting to the side. Like, it feels good when you take out a cracked lens and replace it with a new one. And this is also something that I've been thinking about, obviously, because my phone cracked at the start of this year, and like I was watching a bunch of videos on YouTube of people taking apart cracked phones, and there's a real satisfaction of just getting rid of that cracked screen and putting a clean new one onto it. And like, this game is that feeling, essentially, of putting together broken things again, and like using your ability to mend the world almost, right? And so I love just the unity between the mechanics of fixing this stuff for these people, while also at the same time helping mend these relationships that are happening, right? And you have two core relationships. There's these two sisters, one who's running this shop that's not doing very well, and her sister who's come in and is like, you got to fix your life and all this stuff, and they have tension. And then there's a father and a daughter, and the mother has died, and there's kind of like a distance in that relationship. And so you kind of go back and forth between these people, and the story slowly unravels, and you kind of, and you're also kind of thinking about your relationship with your parents as well, and like trying to fix that. So like, it's just beautiful melding of, as everyone knows, mechanics and story. When it comes together for me, it's just a beautiful thing. I think Assemble with Care does that in such a masterful way, that's also super satisfying mechanically. Just like the polish on just taking things apart and like moving pieces. There's such a tactile nature to all the bits and pieces and things, and like there's this organization aspect to it of like just putting all these screws in a corner so that when you put it back together you remember where they are, and tightening them up again. And it's super satisfying. A really, really special thing that I hope comes to Switch soon, and it's only on PC and phones at the moment, I believe, or on Android, iOS, and really should be experienced by more people. Really, really loved it, and not surprised given Monument Valley and how high quality that game was, but there's a level of polish to this that is really above and beyond. So Assemble with Care really surprised me. An excellent game that I had a great time with this year, and hope people check out. So,
awesome.
There you go.
Right, my number 5, you just talked about it, is Batman Arkham Asylum. This game is the perfect blend of slightly zany comic book, but with dark, gritty, realistic Batman like we're used to with the sort of like the Christian Bale trilogy or something. Like it feels like a perfect blend between the two. And of course, it's an incredibly strong mechanically game when it comes to like being a Metroidvania world, but the world at the same time feels very lived in and real in a comic book sense. Obviously, like the way that the island is designed does feel very legitimate and works. And I think everything from the build up to that game, where you're walking the Joker in as he's strapped to like that upright bed. What do you even call those? But he's
I don't know. Yeah,
being taken into this asylum, and it's really dark in all the right ways. And I think that's reinforced, as you said, by like the audio recordings and things like that. There's just a really nice sense of world building that I can understand why this game made such big waves at the time. Because sure, a few games were kind of getting into that whole kind of world building through audio recordings at the time. But as you say, I think this game does do it best. I mean, we can disagree on other games I think also do it well, but I think this game definitely does it really well. And it just is, it's the right length. It's mechanically so strong, and it all comes together with some awesome boss fights and some awesome like villains and things. The ending's a bit weird, won't go into that, but it's just a really awesome game, and I do want to play the other games in this trilogy because it is just so cool, and was a game I've been meaning to get to since picking up like an Xbox. Like, it's just an awesome superhero game. I still side with like the modern, Insomniac Spider-Man games. I think they're a tier above, but they're in a very different way. I think
trying to do a very different thing as well, right?
Batman's a very different character, and I think an asylum that is designed, I said it at the time when we talked about it on the Nintendo show, that like the whole asylum is the perfect setting for like Mark Hamill's Joker to like wind you up and tease Batman, and there's constantly cameras, and the Joker's always at a distance, always at safety, and
talking to you over the audio system is a
constantly
great way of
and he can do
in.
that because he can see you at all times. It's this tight, neat asylum, that he can always see, and it's just such an awesome setting for a video game. Like, that is absolutely perfect. That is where a Batman video game should be set, where like the Joker can always see you and he's constantly interacting with you. And on top of that, the combat feels pretty good and all these things. It's like it just almost doesn't feel like it has the right to be so thematically solid while at the same time being mechanically solid. Like, that's very rare, especially for superhero games at the time. I know that a lot of games have improved since then, but it's just a really awesome game that I'd highly recommend people go back to.
Doesn't feel like it's aged, really. Like, it just feels still pretty modern when it comes down to it, the fundamentals. Definitely. And like the stealth is really solid as well. Like, there's a lot of crawling through vents and things like that, but I think a lot of the design is set up really smartly to do. Like, I remember a moment where I used the explosive gel underneath a floor where a bunch of dudes were standing, and then you like sneak away, blow up the floor, and they just fall through and die. And it's great. It just really good creativity that can come out of some of those abilities you have. And the traversal is also something that I forgot to mention that's great about that game as well. So,
Totally.
Awesome stuff. Fantastic. My number 5 is a bona fide classic. The game that runs on everything. It's a meme at this point. But the first time I ever played it, the original Doom is my number 5.
Wow. That's high. That is high.
I was blown the fuck away by this game. And we talked about Batman Arkham Asylum holding up well. For a game that came out in the early 90s to be so playable and so fun today for the first time for someone who has played a bunch of shooters and who has played a lot of video games, I was absolutely stunned about how much I loved this game. I played it on Switch, and so it was really easy to pick up and hop into levels and like take enemies down. There's something about the feeling of it and the noise on the guns and the sprite work, the way that the levels are interconnected and designed in such a way that never makes you lost, but still has you thinking about like where you need to go to figure things out. It's just a masterclass in level design and just thrill and just enemies and guns and all that sort of stuff. It's brilliant. I really am so surprised by... Obviously, people talk about classic games all the time of like, oh, this is one of the best games ever. And sometimes for me, that is the case. And oftentimes it isn't, right? Like sometimes I'll go back to a game and be like, well, this didn't really hold up. And I think a lot of the time that happens, especially with NES games of like, yeah, this is fun, but like, I don't know, do I really want to put up with a lot of bullshit difficulty? And like Doom doesn't really have that either. Like that, to some degree it does. Like there are certain bosses that are like very difficult, and definitely it helped to have a bit of save stating going on with that stuff. But you know, that's almost kind of built into the game because it was a PC game. Save states is a thing that PC games kind of have always had. Just the way the PC games work is you can kind of save at any point wherever you want, and it will have your exact moment of where you were and what you had and what you were holding. All that stuff has been in PC games forever. So like, you know, Doom has always been played that way. So even back when it first came out, you could cheese it where you could like save in a spot and then, you know, take on bosses and do a bunch of damage and then hide around a corner and save again. And so like I don't even hold that against it because almost like the design was that back in the day. But I think this is well worth playing for anyone who hasn't tried it before. It's like, obviously it's not the origin of first-person shooters, right? Like Wolfenstein 3D kind of has that crown. But Doom, I think, is often heralded as the most important one because it's the one that took the idea and actually did something super interesting with it and like made a full, well-designed thing. And top to bottom, I think it's practically flawless. Like there's definitely old game design stuff in there, but I think some of it just serves what they're trying to go for, right? Like it is this frenetic game that has like a pumping soundtrack that you're in hell, you're blowing things up, and it's really challenging, but also really fun. And yeah, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. I think Doom is remarkable for how well it holds up in the year of our Lord 2021. So yeah, check it out. The Switch version, I have to say, even though I have access to all these games on Game Pass, I kind of want to just buy them all on Switch because I think they're actually more fun to pick up and play on that and run smoothly, look great, fantastic. So nice. Doom, my number 5.
My number 4 is The Last Guardian.
Oh, wow, this is high. Okay.
Yes. Fumito Ueda, I knew of him before this year, but I didn't think I really knew about like his games that well, but I always wanted to kind of try them. And The Last Guardian, I remember when it came out, I obviously wasn't into very many Nintendo games at all at the time, but I'm aware of how conflicted a lot of people were about this game, and it was very controversial at the time.
It had a very long game development time, right? It was a meme of, hey, is The Last Guardian coming to E3 this year? Nope, not again. Once more, 7 years, 8 years, like however many years passed since Shadow of the Colossus came out, and people were still waiting for this game that was revealed and then disappeared. Sony just disappeared it, and for it to finally come back, I think people were like, holy shit, it's actually a real video. I was one of those people. I was watching live at like 2 a.m. in the morning at E3 2015, losing my mind that this game was re-announced because it was so mythical. And then it came out, and I think people were like, okay, like, it's...
But there were some people who were like, wow, and,
yes, yeah.
And I'm afraid I am one of those people who's on the wow side.
Fair enough, yeah, for sure.
Where... I don't think, here I am in the end of 2021, and I don't think there's anything really much like it out there. It feels like just such a unique game, and all of that is almost entirely around like the character Trico, the dog, cat, fox, flying bird style thing that it is. And your relationship with Trico, the way that it progresses through the game, and some of the things you have to do with Trico from a puzzle perspective, and like that bond you feel with Trico, I think it's actually some really impressive storytelling. And I think that, you know, your traditional Sony AAA game has a lot more obvious cinematic story. And what I love about Ueda's games is that it is a lot more traditional Nintendo style storytelling, where it's the mechanics and your interactions with the world telling the story, not just this westernized AAA film that has become a game hybrid like an Uncharted or something, you know, and I love that.
A lot of it is like environmental stuff, or like stuff that comes through with like unsaid things, because there's like made up language, I think, in his games a lot of the time. Like Nico has that when you're talking to the girl, and like it's almost you know, fantastical in the way that the language is constructed. So there's an emotion there that is evoked without any words, which is really cool. Yeah,
really cool. And, you know, at the base of it, it is just like a puzzle platformer with your pal Trico. That's it. Like, that's the whole game. But there's so many layers of what you are doing and the world that you're exploring, and just some really incredible, majestic moments where you're either calling Trico from a point, or you're riding Trico and you're making these insane jumps across the world that you didn't think were possible. And, you know, I really like where the story goes, like where you're from, where Trico's from, who the last guardian is, all these like questions that I feel the game actually does answer in a way that I was very satisfied with. And I think the ending is stellar. Like, I really think that this game just goes places in an awesome way. And, you know, who knows what Ueda's doing now? I think it's a long time since we've heard from him, but
I feel like Sony were just like, okay, we're not doing this again. Go off and do your own thing now. We're not dealing with you anymore.
I know,
dude.
It does feel like that, and it's a shame because this is the kind of Sony. This is going to be a controversial saying, but like this is like Nintendo when you give them a budget, you know. This is if you give Nintendo that cinematic budget, you know. There's a lot of Nintendo style
Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild exists. Okay, I don't want to hear any of that nonsense on this show.
I know. They're very different games, but there's just like a level, and that's maybe unfair, and I'm just associating one Japanese storyteller with another, but I do think it's just an awesome game, and I'd love to see. I could genuinely see Nintendo lean more in this direction. I don't think they will, but I think it's just a really...
I mean, like, when you talk about the type of storytelling that The Last Guardian does, it is very Breath of the Wild in terms of its, like, lightness and, like, using the world to tell the story, right?
Totally. That's what I mean. Yeah, totally. And I love games like that. There's a lot of games similar to it, like a Journey or something, you know. It's like
for sure.
The world is telling the story, you know. It doesn't, and it can still be cinematic and impressive, but it doesn't have to be a film, you know. It's something that stands on its own 2 feet. And Trico is just the most unique character I've ever witnessed in a video game, and is really special. And as a dog lover, like that does evoke something in me for sure.
Yes, we should point out I hate dogs. Bally loves dogs. This is important.
And there is just this way that Trico behaves that really grew on me, and it's a beautiful game. And yes, there's jank in there. It's a lot of the indoor areas can get very frustrating, but again, it's one of those situations where even some of my favorite games of all time have weak aspects, flaws, and this game is no different. But yeah, my number 4, definitely The Last Guardian.
Strong pick, a bold pick, some might say, but
yes.
A good one. I appreciate that. That's very cool. My number 4 is a game that I was forced to play by Bally at the start of this year as part of our game trade. And man, I'm glad you forced me to play this game because it's fucking good. Rhythm Heaven Paradise.
Wow. Yes.
Obviously, this came quite high in our top 50 games of all time list, and there's a reason for it. I think it's fantastic. It is like the weirdness of WarioWare mixed with like the funk of the beats of like the best music games out there, mixed with like there's something about it that is so intrinsically fun and weird. And I think it like nails this line between those two things and makes something so unique and off the wall that really resonated strongly with me, right? Like, I think something about the way these games are designed to these repetitive beats that all have a through line and a kind of almost a thing you can learn and get really good at, but also still has enough variation with it to where it becomes tricky at certain points. And there are moments where, like, there are certain mini games I really loved, like the one with the two monkeys and the golf ball, and they throw the golf ball at you and you have to hit it, and like the timing and the beat on that I just vibed with so hard, and I was just able to nail that one perfectly. And then you have other ones like the weird like amoeba frogs like going in like a row together, and then you have obviously podcast meme favorite, spin it boy, spin it boy, spin it boy, spin it boy, the fucking frogs dancing. Like, there are so many like iconic this is my song, that's right, like they're just fucking
looping in
drilled
your head for eternity.
Oh, I suppose, like, that's the rhythm, and it's fucking drilled into my brain because Rhythm Heaven like does that. It takes these songs, these kind of like mini hooks that they've written, and it just fucking drills into your psyche, and you just know them inside out. And like, there's something catchy about all of them, and there's something that just like works with the vibe they're going for. And I played this a significant amount, finished it fully, like did all the extra stuff, went through the worlds and got to the final section of the game. And you know, they do some great remixes later on. I'd say if there was a weakness, I think part of this is just because the way the game is designed, but there's a little bit of a slow build when you're learning a rhythm game, because like they have to set up, okay, what's the rules for this one? This is the seal one, therefore if you press A, they'll spin once. If you press AB, they'll go this way. If you hold A, it'll do this. So every rhythm game has its own rules, which means learning those rules takes time. So you have to like do practice rounds, and then once you've done the practice round, then you do the full thing. And then like the full thing is kind of easy sometimes, and so it's not until later in the game where you get like the remixes that throw in all the mini games back to back.
You're going from rule based to rule based to rule based in a short period of time, and it's so much harder than like mixing WarioWare games together, for example.
Because you have to remember like what button does what for which one, and like eventually if you're playing the game consistently, that will stay in your mind and you'll be fine and it won't be an issue. But there were certainly points at the end where I was like, okay, there are harder versions of each section, as well as like having these different sections back to back. And like, I love the way in which everything like weaves into one, where they tie in all the music from all these different games into this one kind of big sequence at the end. And that's some of my favorite stuff in the game. And obviously, like, if I was to go back to it today and like just jump into one of those harder levels, I'd be like, what the fuck am I doing? Because I've forgotten everything, all the muscle memory now. But like, I think it's so good. And please make a Rhythm Heaven for Switch. They did a WarioWare, next make a Rhythm Heaven. Oh my goodness, I love it so much. I think it's amazing. And I think part of it as well is because it's a game you have to focus 100% of your attention on. Like, I wasn't listening to podcasts at the same time as playing it. I wasn't like doing anything else, and so there is a way in which it like really captured my attention. Like I couldn't do anything else, and so I had to be focused on it, and I think that was to its benefit. It really grabbed me. So thanks, Bally, for choosing that
Nice.
to make me play it, because it was worth the wait. I really loved it. So
I'm afraid your game that you made me play didn't
But
quite.
you're saying that Codenames Team is not your number one? No. I mean, something wrong with that.
Sadly isn't. But it is my number. No, it's not my number.
Oh, damn it! I was looking forward to it.
My number 3 is Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. I think this game does two things very well. I think number one, it's a fantastic legacy to the 4 if you include that other Vita one, the 3 games before it. But as someone who played the other Uncharted games and like since 2018, I think it does a great job of talking about Nathan Drake, the character, and his legacy and his relationships with the people he cares about the most, and putting those in a modern context that still evolves those stories and does something interesting that isn't just another. This game very much doesn't feel like just another Uncharted, which I think because the previous 3 games were all so close together, their stories merge together a lot more in my mind, whereas this game feels like it's learned it's very noticeable that it came out after Last of Us Part 1, for example. Like it does a number of story things and pacing wise that just feel a lot more deliberate, and I personally enjoyed a lot more. Secondly, I think it's very good at mixing up what you're doing in the game, and the variety feels fresher. And that's not just because it mixes in stuff like having a car, although that helps. I love those moments. I just think it does a better job of mixing up the gameplay from one thing to the next. And I think the game does a really good job of not just having a ton of like monster rooms where you're just doing wave after wave of enemies. Like, yes, there are moments in that game that will happen, of course, because this is an Uncharted game. But I feel like they are so few and far between in comparison to the other three games, like massively. And I think getting that sorted in a game like Uncharted 4 is fantastic. And I think that story-wise, this game does a really good job. I'd compare it in a way to a game like Horizon, where there are story beats where you get to points in the game that they are talking about characters who aren't in the room in a very impressive, they feel like this really grounded way that they're talking about these characters because of the journey you've been on to get to these spaces in the game. I'm not saying that they are still cinematic, and I'm not saying it's necessarily entirely unique to video games, but it does epic moments really well that is beyond just a cutscene. It is a conversation between characters that is talking about the space that you're in that I think this game does really well. And yeah, I'm just glad they managed to mix up the Uncharted formula in a way that I was very satisfied with. And it is a long game, but I never felt like it was overly long. Like, I genuinely did enjoy all 16, 19 hours of this game. Like, it's long.
The longest Uncharted for sure. Yeah, definitely more in line with The Last of Us in terms of pacing and length. And I think you can see the influence of the writing of Last of Us in Uncharted 4 as well. It's a lot more mature in its storytelling and a little more grounded. And I think that lends to the character relationships and stuff like that.
For sure.
Really well done. Yeah.
And the game leaves the series in a great place. Like, I think there's loads of directions the series can go, and I look forward to what Sony choose to do next. Hopefully not just a remake of Uncharted 1, but who knows at this point. And yeah, it's a great way to represent Uncharted in 2016, which is when I think this game came out. So like, it's a great game. And yeah, I really enjoyed playing it on my PS5. I don't think it was a 60 FPS. It was
I think you played it before they did the patch.
I played it before the patch, but yeah, it's still a fantastic game. Would highly recommend.
Lovely stuff. I'm here with my number 3 game, Bally, and I've been banging on about it. You know, like it was gonna be here. It was inevitable. You cannot stop it. It's motherfucking Grindstone. When will people play Grindstone? For fuck's sake! Oh my god. This is one of those where it could have been forgotten about, because I basically played it over the Christmas period last year, and it just devoured my life. Like, I was watching TV with people, but I wasn't really watching TV. I was fucking playing Grindstone, man. You know what that means? That means chaining people together. That means
Nbz gets away with hanging out with family and just playing Switch.
Yes, that's well, I'm not gonna fight. Here's the thing, right? Okay, like, people are sitting there watching TV at the same time. Is that socializing? Really? No, not really. I don't call that socializing.
That's a strong point.
That's sitting in a place looking at a screen. And you know what? If I'm sitting in a place looking at a different screen, does that make a difference? I don't think so. Anyway, Grindstone, so good. Like, probably my favorite podcast game of all time. It does such an amazing job of being this, on the surface it looks like it's a match 3, but really it's this really intricate and interesting puzzle game that forces you to adapt on the fly all the time and like figure out, okay, I need to get to this chest. How do I chain enough guys together? It almost has a little bit of the Into the Breach thing of like staring at the screen for long enough for a thing to present itself. And like, clearly not to the degree of that game, because that game like has layers and layers of complexity, and this is much more simple when it comes down to it. But being this big guy with your big mace, and you're hitting these enemies and crunching through them, like getting big chains. As soon as you get 10 chains, you get a grindstone appearing on the map, and then you can use that with any link, so you can link to that to link to a different color of guys, and it's all between different colors. There's just a real satisfaction in the sound design of it, in the movement, and just when you get a sequence of guys together and you just have like this entire board clearing thing, there is no greater, more satisfying feeling than doing that in Grindstone. And it's perfect portable. Obviously it started off as an Apple Arcade game as well, so Apple Arcade stuff's getting a lot of love on my list here this year with Assemble with Care and Grindstone, despite the fact that didn't play it on a phone at all. But hey, it's making some interesting video games happen, which is a cool thing. And I think on Switch it's perfect. Like I absolutely, obviously I should also say it was a review code provided for Grindstone from Pop Agenda, so I appreciate that. But like, and I might not have checked out the game otherwise, but like, wow, I was so impressed with this, and it's one of those never-ending gobstoppers of like, yeah, I said I finished it, quote-unquote, because I got to the end of the original 150 levels, but since then they've patched it to add even more. There's like 300 fucking levels at this point, so if ever, it's like Hades, you know, if I want to just go back and play something on my Switch that's a turn off everything, my brain, I just want to focus on this thing, but also have like a podcast on and, just chill and play something handheld, Grindstone is always a go-to. I've gone back to it multiple times during the year. There's one weird thing that's been happening though, that when I go back to the Switch menu and load back in, for some reason it like has massive slowdown and like lags before I can start playing again. So I don't know if that's been patched or something, but that was a little weird. But hopefully it's all good. And yeah, I plan to play some more of this over this Christmas because it's a perfect Christmas game of everyone's watching some shitty TV. I'm going to play Grindstone in the background. And yeah, I don't think I did a really good job of like explaining really what it is or what it like. It's one of those games you kind of.
It's hard. I mean, everyone's played Candy Crush. We know how it works.
You motherfucker! I will end you. I will end this podcast. Oh my god! Oh, I cannot stand it. Grindstone is a perfect video game. It perfectly achieves exactly what it sets out to do, and it is some of the most satisfying, like just crunchy mechanics that I have played in a game in a long time. Absolutely adore it. Love Grindstone. Awesome. So it's my number 3. There you go.
Right, my number 2. I was so close to putting these together, but my number 2 is Uncharted: The Lost Legacy.
Wow, I was gonna say like that. I didn't hear Lost Legacy. I was like, did he just bump that off the list?
I'll admit, I swapped these around at the very last minute. I was like,
you made the right decision, my friend.
I mean, it's tight because and they are very similar in many ways, but yeah, The Lost Legacy, ways that it kind of improves on 4 is it's smaller, it's leaner, it's denser. Even though I love the length of Uncharted 4, I'm always up for a shorter game. I think that's maybe similar to both of us, Nbz, where, generally speaking, we're always up for a shorter game, like leaner, denser, more concise. And I think the other thing that Lost Legacy does incredibly well is it is the best location in an Uncharted game in this place called India, which is awesome. Yeah, really great place. And on top of the fact that the character you're playing as, Chloe, has Indian heritage, and she makes a big point of like linking that to the places you go, the experiences you go through. It feels a lot more real than just Nathan Drake visiting some other random part of the world. Like it feels actually grounded, and that's awesome. And
there's an elephant moment in that game.
There's an elephant
maybe
moment.
One of my favorite moments in any Uncharted. It's
so
beautiful.
Good. And on top of that, it's got all the great mechanics and pacing that Uncharted 4 has, but it's just leaner and denser.
It has a better train sequence than Uncharted 2. It does it
yes,
better.
It really does. It really does. It has an incredible ending, like action-wise. Like I was really blown away by just, it was thing after thing after thing, and I was like, wow, I did not expect this for a game that was initially just going to be like Uncharted 4 DLC. Like it goes above and beyond that description so far. And again, like no Nathan Drake in it whatsoever, and that does feel refreshing. As much as I like him and his story, I'm glad they've done something very separate to him, and they've now proven that you can do an Uncharted game that does not have Nathan Drake in it, which might be an idea going forward. So it's cool that this game exists to prove that point.
Yeah. There's also the test bed for the open stuff that they did in Last of Us, right? Like that open section with the diegetic map that, like, when you pull it up, shows where you are on it in game.
Diegetic, what a word! Yeah. Diegetic map, yes, totally. And yeah, you can really see where Last of Us Part 2 has learned from this game massively. And Naughty Dog just, in my view, keep hitting it out the park, and cannot wait to see what they do next. But this is an important step in their evolution, I feel, when it came out back in 2017. Like this was an awesome game that I've played now, but I'm sure it was back in 2017. And I cannot wait to see where Naughty Dog go next, whether that's something new or is Uncharted or Last of Us. I think they're probably going to do all three at different points, but we'll see. It's just so cool. I love The Lost Legacy. I would really highly recommend it, even above Uncharted 4, especially as it's much shorter, and you can just play it as like a standalone thing. I think you will get more out of Uncharted 4 by playing the previous trilogy as much as that game you can play by itself. I think this game, Lost Legacy, does an even better job of being able to play it just standalone and just dip in, give it a go. I'd highly recommend.
I guess that means that it's your favorite Uncharted as well, because I know that you said that Uncharted 4 you liked more than the other three, and if you put this above.
Oh yeah, the other 3 are below Uncharted 4 for me. I agree 2 is probably the best out of those 3. I also really liked 3, and then 1 has aspects that have aged very poorly, but I think
one's
it's
not
still
great,
a good game.
if I'm honest.
Yeah, but I maybe Sony will go with another studio for Uncharted next. There's been rumors about that a little while, so we'll see where it goes. But I think Uncharted is doing a good job in 2016-17, and I'm interested where they go in the future, because it's clearly a franchise they're going to go back to, because it's a franchise that's become close to my heart. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. Really good. All right, my number 2. My number 2 is the best Nintendo game that Nintendo didn't make. And it's a game that I couldn't stop thinking about, and I wish was longer, and I want more of it, and it breaks my heart that we don't have more of it. It's Astro's Playroom. What a fucking video game. Holy shit. For a thing that's like a little...
Just a free demo that's thrown in.
Free demo. It's better than anything I played on PS5, bar none. Like, nothing else on PS5 comes close to this game. This game is a fucking masterpiece. It is so, so good. It is the perfect way to show off the PlayStation 5's controller stuff, but I think, more than anything else, has, like, the level of polish and sheen unforeseen in, like, games of this style that aren't made by Nintendo, right? Like, so many 3D platformers out there I feel are like a little jank, and then like we were talking about Yooka-Laylee earlier, like that's like, all right guys, you tried but you didn't quite make it. Whereas
it's like a little peek into what Nintendo could be like with a bit of 4K 60 FPS going on,
for sure.
Like it's that level of modern polish.
It's magic, man. And like, I won't deny, I think part of the charm of it is, when you first get into like the rocket ship and suddenly the fucking analog triggers are just like on your fingers, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? This is crazy. Like the other day my cousin was here and he hadn't held a PS5 controller yet. I was like, all right, okay, just put this in your hands. I'm going to put you through the controller demo that's at the start of Astro's Playroom. And he was like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on here? This is wild. Because that game just like does such a good job of showing that stuff. And I think
not going to get that feedback from an iPad.
No, yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, unless, haptics go places, man. I wouldn't be surprised in a couple of years if we're there.
I guess.
But yes, I like, it's such a great love letter to Sony's history, like a museum of stuff and hardware. Like every time I got a piece of hardware, I just like zoom in on it and just like rotate it around. There's a point where I had my DualShock 4 next to me and I was like, all right, I'm going to just put this up to the screen and like zoom in on the actual one just to see how close in detail it is. And it's like fucking flawless. It's like exactly the same. Like there's so much care and attention put into it from every tiny little aspect. And doing the speedrunning levels was fun, like coming back and beating some of Bally's times. Sometimes that I couldn't beat because they'd patched out ways in order to get faster times, which was fun. But
oh really?
Yeah, I think it's the first level, the one that like Dan Reichert spent ages on and you also spent ages on. I think they patched a way for it to not be as broken anymore, which is a shame. So those times will live in perpetuity while no one else can attain them anymore. So that's cool. Okay, but hey, I did beat you on some of those, and I know you.
I can go back to those levels.
You hopped back in, and you're like, all right, I'm coming to take you down. There were some other people on my friends list. Like it was good going back and forth on that, but it's just too short. I need a full, 10-hour platformer of Astro. Like, that's what I want this team to do.
It's coming. I feel it.
As long as it's, it could be a VR thing. Who knows? Like, potentially.
Could be both. Could be both, yeah.
Yeah, Astro's Playroom. What a magical experience. Like, it's very rare, I think, these days that I'm just like, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to play this, right? Like, even when I'm playing stuff that I love, I'm like, all right, I'm play this for a couple hours, then I'll watch, something, and then I'll go on YouTube or whatever. But like Astro's Playroom, as soon as I got into it, I was like, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to live here. I just want to jump around and just look at the gorgeous visuals.
It's so much better than it should be. Like, it's just so good. It was such a pleasant surprise when I got that. Got my PS5 like day one. It was just, this is fantastic. Like I know that there's no games on this system, but at least I have this, and it is so good.
Yeah, honestly, like I consider just be like, I'm just gonna delete all my save data and replay everything again from the beginning. Like that's how good the game is. So, Astro's Playroom, my number 2, Bally. Time for your number 1. I have a good idea of what it is, but why don't you let the people tell them what it is?
Okay, yeah, you probably worked it out. My number 1 is Shadow of the Colossus. Another Ueda game, obviously. Where do you start on this game? Where do you start? Obviously, so many people absolutely love this game. It was one game that was on my list, knowing that it had been remade by Blue Point. I was like, now that I own a PS4, PS5, I should play this game. And it was so awesome that this game had like, I think it got a PS4 Pro boost, and that's what the version I played on PS5. And God, this game is incredible. It really is. I think it does this incredible combination of like this open world to explore, but the fact that you go and defeat these colossi and then get warped back after each one gives like the world a real sense of adventure, but each adventure is like...
Oh, so you're telling me it's a roguelike is what it is?
Kind of. But it's like, it's 20-minute, 30-minute adventures just, and like 8, how many colossi are there? 8, 11?
I think 16 or something?
16? Yeah, it is 16, you're right. But each one is like this 15, 20-minute mini adventure, it feels like. They're all in completely different parts of the world, and they all feel very different to beat. And
I think it's one of the first examples of like a boss rush game, not a boss rush, but like all the challenges are just bosses. There's no other real, like, there's a bit of like platforming and exploration, but like the main, you're not like fighting regular enemies, right? Like it's all bosses the whole time.
Yeah, and like for a world that does feel quite diverse and interesting to explore, it's a very bold move because it's such a lean use of that environment. Like this game could have been a 20, 30, 40 hour open world game, and they could have made it like that just by sticking money systems into the game and more enemies and collectibles and still have the bosses that are there. But ultimately it's like it's more from less, and the idea that this is a PS2 game and they didn't feel the need to clutter that world with collectibles and Ubisoft style open world filler, arguably, is such a bold move for the time, and even holds up so well in 2021. And I think that having those bosses that are just such a focal point of the entire story, and I do really like the story. Like, I enjoy how strange it is and how tragic at parts it is, and the ending is so incredible. In a way that's obviously very similar to a game like The Last Guardian, and obviously there are huge similarities between this game and that, but I think this game is such the fact that it came out on PS2 just completely boggles my mind, because it does feel like such a modern game, apart from some of the climbing jank, which I can't defend, and like The Last Guardian, there is just that a bit of jank in there, but for me it doesn't hold the game back enough to not have this as obviously my number one. And I think that yes, climbing up those colossi at points can be tricky, but there were a few times I just kind of completely fell off the colossi and blamed the game for it. More often than not, it wasn't me, and it is just kind of learning and trying to roll with what is ultimately a fairly old movement jumping kind of platforming system. But I think that's overall a fairly small part of the game anyway, and the sheer like beauty of some of these bosses that you're fighting and the music and cinematography
makes you question, should you be killing them? It's interesting.
That is an interesting question. That is an interesting question. And I do like the way that the game wraps up. It is truly tragic, but I think the reason for like the world being there and some of the characters that are linked to it in the opening and how it all comes together, it's really sad, but I think it's so interesting that all those colossi like have a purpose and a place, and the way that you have interacted with those colossi in the game, I think
it speaks to what you were saying before about Last Guardian, right? Of like totally. the way in which the narrative is delivered through like much more subtle means.
More subtle, and I think that style of storytelling is just a much better way of conveying tragedy, honestly. Like, I think there's just something so impactful about it that you're left just a bit kind of gut-wrenched in the stomach, honestly. Like, that game really does this to you. And yeah, it's incredible. I would highly recommend playing the Blue Point remake remaster. I do think the old version is probably looking pretty old by this point, but
still pretty stunning for a PS2 game, though.
Yeah, massively
pretty impressive.
And yeah, it's just wild that it was like this open world game before there were a lot of other open world games at the time. Like, that is still, because there's just something so lean and honestly Breath of the Wild like about that open world that you just don't see in other open world games. Like, it's really I would obviously compare it to games like Breath of the Wild and The Pathless, which I would argue are both quite lean open world games and resist the temptation of completely barfing just random actions across the whole map. And I think that leaner open world games like this game are something I just want to see more of, because I love them so much.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a game that I deeply respect and will probably never play because I know myself too well, and that I think are much more forgiving of stuff like controls that are a little wonky, and I know I just get annoyed by it. So I probably should try it at some point. Do you have a physical copy of this, or is
I do not?
Can't hand it over to me. And
it's pretty cheap. It's on PS5. You can.
Yeah. I'll probably get to it. When they put it on PC, a real man's gaming system, that's when I'll get to shout at it. Sony have a habit, right?
I reckon they might stick like a Blue Point collection on PC, and I'd definitely play it there.
Sony getting into the PC game, they'll do it. That makes sense. Or I could just emulate it, PS2 emulator,
or you could do that
into 4K.
I mean, I would play the Blue Point version, but I'm sure
I think that's the one to play. Yeah, it makes the most sense.
And playing at 60 FPS. It was like one of the first games I played on 60 FPS, other than Astra, obviously. And
very nice.
Yeah, it was like, my God, I can't go back.
Yeah, no, you've become tainted, just like myself.
Tainted.
That's how it goes. Well, Bally, we come to it.
Here we go.
My choice for number one game of the year. It's not a very traditional pick.
I can't work out what this is going to be, by the way. I thought it was going to be Astra.
Yeah, it's not a very traditional pick, but my game of the year is the first 20 minutes of Half-Life Alyx that I played last night, because you're not the only one who can talk about new hardware that they've not told their friend about a podcast. I bought a fucking Oculus Quest 2, motherfucker, and I played Beat Saber, and I played Half-Life Alyx, and
wow.
There you go.
That's a plot twist. That's a bomb dropped.
Yeah. That's not actually my number one. I just wanted to put that in. But I did. I bought an Oculus Quest 2, and I played the first 20 minutes of Half-Life Alyx yesterday, and it might be one of the most magical experiences I've ever experienced in a video game. So look out for that when I talk about it, probably when I finished it next year.
You did actually do that. Wow, cool.
I did. I did buy. It was a Black Friday deal, and I bought an Oculus Quest 2. And
talking about scary games, though, how scary is that?
Well, the first 20 minutes, by which I mean the opening area where I'm on this balcony and throwing cans at a pigeon and juggling cans in the air between my hands and just being in awe of this VR experience of this is so stupid. This isn't even part of the game. The most fun I had was there's a rubbish bin, and I put it in the corner, and I picked up a dirty apple off the floor, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to try and get this in the bin. And I just did that for 10 minutes of trying to throw this and get it into the bin. And it was honestly some of the most fun I've had in a fucking game in a long time. It's unbelievable.
Remind me, is this plugged into your PC or is this independent of it?
Yeah, so the Oculus Quest 2 is wireless, fully wireless. And I've bought Beat Saber on it, which means that when I go around to people for Christmas, you don't have to plug it into anything. It has 128 gigs on it, and it's just fully wireless VR. What an amazing thing. It is just such a good way to do that. And I bought Beat Saber on the Quest, and
the resolution is just as good.
It's fantastic, man. It looks great, especially when I hooked it up with a wire to my PC for Half-Life Alyx, and it looks incredible. It is just so cool, and I'm very excited to dig into that. But that will be for later.
Gonna show the family the VR.
Yes, yeah, exactly. My dad has done it, and I have a video of him playing Beat Saber.
Oh, here we go.
It's very, very funny. I will send it to you after this. It's great. Anyway, let's get back to the list. We can chat about this later. But anyway, my actual number one is in fact a cheat, as is obvious.
Oh, okay.
And if you've been paying attention this year, it probably won't come as much of a surprise. My number one is the entire Yakuza franchise. Every Yakuza game that I have played this year.
Good point. Yeah, I never paused and thought, why has there not been a Yakuza game?
Zero mention of Yakuza in this entire list. But yes, Kiwami 2, 3, 4, 5 that I'm currently halfway through, Judgment and Lost Judgment, which counts as a new game. But I have done 7 Yakuza games this year. Similar to how you've done Halo. The joke was...
Same number, although I did 2 last year, but yeah.
Yeah, the joke was the Halo Yakuza show for on Nintendo.
Exactly.
Stuff this year, and what can I say? This is now one of my favorite franchises of all time. I absolutely fucking love Yakuza. It is such a interesting and weird thing that I remember hearing about it back in the day of it's the Japanese GTA, and I just don't think that does justice what this thing is, because it really isn't that at all. It is this strange mix of tiny dense open world with real narrative focus, cutscenes that can frankly rival Metal Gear Solid 4 for length in terms of sometimes I'm just sitting there for 40 minutes just watching stuff happen, and sometimes you're just in this strange, bizarre encounter where you walk into a room and a bunch of grown men in diapers are there and they're being fed by women with bottles of milk, and you're like, what the fuck is this game? This is so weird and off the wall and the most Japanese thing possible. It just blends the level of humor and drama and melodrama, really, which is like kind of a core to Yakuza. Is like, there are ways I which in think, you know, melodrama can be done badly, and like I'm kind of a fan of it when it's done well, but I think partially because I play these games in Japanese and like the language barrier then makes it more difficult for me to discern if, like, I think melodrama and like stuff that's in English is a little more corny, but I think the way that, because it's in Japanese, like it resonates a bit stronger for me. It's just such a fine balance that could totally go wrong, and it's very easy to see how this series could just not work at all and be complete tonal whiplash. And like, in some ways it is tonal whiplash, but then in other ways it just perfectly fits, and it is the core identity of that series is just off the wall wild stuff combined with like this crime drama that has real heart and real like love in its characters, you know, like. And the wonderful thing about it is just playing through all of them back to back is it is this consistent story. Like, these characters grow older and they change, and you see them change and you watch what happens, and like stuff from a previous game will come back and you'll be like, oh shit, even in side quests, there's this really funny side quest that follows through all the games, I think up to Yakuza 3, where there's this guy who, well, I don't know, there's a way in which you could view it as funny and a way in which you could view it as like a little messed up, but there's this guy who's like, oh, this girl, I gave her all this stuff and now she's left me and it's terrible and I'm going to jump off this roof, and like you try to talk him off, and then the girl comes and she's like, no, actually I love you, and clearly the subtext of it is like she's a gold digger and she's like been stringing him along this whole time and he's too stupid to realize. And like, you come across this couple in the first game, you see them in the second game, and then they're in the third game as well. And so like, if you're the type of person who does all the side quests, you will have like characters from previous side quests that follow through to new side quests in the new game. So it actually really encourages you to know everything that has happened in the previous one, including all the side quests, because then you'll get that bonus kind of like carry through between all the sequels. And that's one of the things I love about it, right? Like, Kamurocho is my second home at this point. I know it better than most places in real life. Like, I can get to that.
I've said this joke before on the other show, but it's a low bar.
Yes, of course. Everyone knows I have terrible geography skills and I don't know what where anywhere is. That said, I think it's impressive that like you can say, okay, take me to Serena, the new Serena, which is the bar that they hang out in. I'm like, put me anywhere in Kamurocho, I'll get there without looking at the map at all. I'll just get there, you know?
It's a nice feeling in the game where you know where you're going as well. It's even more satisfying when it's actually a fairly complex, dense space that you know
for sure. And it's like, it's real comfort food, you know, because once you know that space well enough and once you know the familiarity, that the thing I think when Yakuza is at its best, I find, is when you're doing the main story and then you're like, okay, in between this main beat and the next main beat, I'm going to run around and clean out all the side quests. And usually, like, I think Kiwami actually does this maybe the best of all of them, where it's like, okay, I've done the main story thing, now I'm going to do 6 or 7 side quests, and then I'm going to go back to the main story. And all the side quests are really bite-sized and short and like funny, and like they don't take too much effort and they don't take too much like grind, and they're just enjoyable little slices of life almost as you go around the city. And there are certain games that do it better, certain games that don't do it as well, but it is a consistent through line that I have loved about just playing these games, and there's a familiarity to it that I fall into so easily. And you know, at this point, you know, Haruka, who's the girl who is kind of like your adoptive daughter almost, you meet her in the first game and she's like 7 or something, and like by the time of Yakuza 5 she's like on her own now and she's like trying to become a pop idol, and the section of the game you play as her, and like her entire section, there's no combat, all of it is dance battles, which is like a rhythm game. And it's like, it's so cool to see this character who has literally gone from this tiny child to this almost pseudo adult, and like by the end of Yakuza 6 probably a full adult. Like, you just don't get that in terms of storytelling, like long form storytelling, and games can do that in a really unique way, right? Like, I think books and games are the best at doing that sort of like really long form storytelling, and it's crazy that it all comes together. It's such a good series. If I was to pick out a favorite overall, I would probably say the original Judgment is my favorite, all things considered. I think that the combat there really clicked with me. It's the only game where the combat works. Like, for the most part, I play these games on easy because I think the combat's a little... it's okay, but it's not what I'm there for. Whereas Judgment, I think, does a much better job of the smoothness and like the animations and stuff. It just feels better to play. So I played that one on normal and enjoyed it a great deal. But I'd say of the Yakuza games, the main ones, 5 is climbing in my mind, honestly. Like, the first 10 hours of 5, I was a taxi driver and doing races as Kiryu. That was great. And, then I was a hunter in the wild in the snow with Saejima. And now I'm Haruka and I'm doing this kind of idle thing. And I think there's an argument to be made for 5. But I think Kiwami 2 is so good because for 15 or 10 or 15 hours, I just ignored the entire main story and I just did the Cabaret Club minigame. The best minigame in any game there's ever been. It has its own storyline. It has it's a whole competition that you're like taking down all these other cabaret clubs. Really good writing and just funny storytelling and great characters. Lovable stuff. Incredible. Yakuza, the whole series. I couldn't just pick one, so I had to...
I think that was a good way of doing it, so we weren't spending 7 entries talking.
For sure, because to be frank with you, like, I don't think I would have been able to put these other interesting games on the list if, four or 5 of the slots had just been Yakuza games, because... frankly, that's what it would have been, and I think that's less interesting. So,
see, I'm regretting not coupling the 2 Uncharted games because I could have squeezed in Star Wars Episode 1 Racer on my list.
Oh, that would have been fun.
Absolutely
Well, yeah, but I think you made the right choice in the end with Lost Legacy, so I'm fine with it. I think it works. So there you go. Those are our top 10 games of the year that didn't come out this year. Fun year, I think.
Shall we run through our lists?
Let's go through our list. Bally, go from your 10 to 1.
Right, my number 10 was Mark of the Ninja. Number 9, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. Number 8, Katana Zero. Number 7, Halo 3. Number 6, Art of Rally. Number 5, Batman Arkham Asylum. Number 4, The Last Guardian. Number 3, Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Number 2, Uncharted The Lost Legacy. And number 1, Shadow of the Colossus.
And mine, number 10, Paper Mario. Number 9, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. Number 8, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. Number 7, Batman Arkham Asylum. Number 6, Assemble with Care. Number 5, Doom. Number 4, Rhythm Heaven Paradise. Number 3, Grindstone. Number 2, Astro's Playroom. And number 1, every goddamn fucking Yakuza game. How about that? So there you go. I think a pretty cool list overall for both of us, and you can clearly see, Bally, that you've gone back into the well of Sony stuff this year and have played a lot of good stuff.
Yes, this is my 3rd year of owning Nintendo platforms, and between games like Uncharted, Halo, it's clear I'm still playing a lot of catch up. So to all the Nintendo fans out there, I apologize. I don't think this problem will keep continuing in perpetuity because I think I'm getting there on the Sony backlog when it comes.
You'll
to
run out eventually.
The big ones, right? Because you got to remember they release like 2 or 3 games a year, which I've just been catching up on. That's all.
Yeah, and they're good stuff. So. Do you have any stuff that didn't quite make it that you'd like to shout out?
I mean, obviously, 2 games you care about a lot that unfortunately didn't make it are Bloodstained and Codename Steam.
Yeah, if we were to do a worst game of the year category, which of those would win it for you? I'm curious, Bally.
I like Codename Steam quite a bit more than Bloodstained. There's a lot of good stuff in Codename Steam. There's just a bit of frustration in there as well. Whereas I felt the frustration with Bloodstained just kept coming back at me again and again.
It's a perfect game. Oh, it's so perfect. I love it.
Zelda Oracle of Ages is a very good game.
Yeah.
I thought the dungeons were superb, bar 1, and I think the overworld was sort of take it or leave it, but that is a fantastic game. Part-Time UFO has so much charm, and another year could have squeezed in the bottom. I think my official number 11 is probably Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. I love that game.
Yeah.
We obviously played Mario Galaxy this year. Halo Reach is another Halo game I'm a big fan of. Games like Donut County, they're in and around there. Spyro, Abzu. Yeah, I don't know. Not much else reaching the heights of my top 10, to be honest. But yeah, that I think that's a fair enough representation.
Yeah. My ones that missed out were Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which I had a very good time with and thought was excellent and really loved. But I think it wasn't doing a lot new, or didn't surprise me super much. Even though I loved
number
it.
11? That's your 11.
I have a few number 11s. Okay. Maybe Bug Snacks could be a number 11. I was kind of going back and forth because I really liked Bug Snacks. I think it's actually very, very good.
Got that DLC on the way.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely worth playing Bug Snacks. I at one point had Assassin's Creed Odyssey at number 8 on this list and was like, man, I haven't finished that, but also I've put 50 hours into it this year, and like it's the never-ending gobstopper. And I went back to it, and I'm like, this is very good. I like it a lot. It's an Assassin's Creed game. Do I want to put that on a list? Probably not. Like, I really love it. It's like, it's just the junk food of video games, you know? Like, I will just sit there for like 3 hours and barely make any progress, but like look at some gorgeous Greek beaches and like, you know, sail around a bit and kill some guys. And, you know, it's not like it's changing that much. There's some fun little writing in there. I think Cassandra is a great character, but yeah, I thought it'd be better to have other interesting games on my list, so I didn't have it on there.
Sure.
The other one was Ever Oasis, which is an old 3DS game that I went back to, and I really liked it a lot. I think it has a lot of great things going for it. Ultimately, you know, I think at the end of the day, some parts of it rubbed me a little bit the wrong way, and some stuff that started out great was not as great the further I got into it, but it made a great first impression, I think, and is a delight, and I'm glad that Grezzo got to make something that was their own, and I hope they get to do it again at some point, because I think it had some really cool ideas, and was a really fun 3DS game to revisit this year, and one to kind of tick off the backlog. So yeah, those are the kind of ones that slightly missed out for me.
Cool.
But yeah, it's going to do us for this episode of the show. Obviously, thanks everybody for listening to this marathon session. And obviously, we're going to have some more marathon sessions coming up with some more podcasts. So, Bally, do you want to tell the folks what our plan is for the next couple of shows?
Okay, so yeah, this was the first of 3 pillars that we have for Game of the Year special episodes. So our next Game of the Year episode will be our Nintendo episode. So that is going to be This Nintendo Life, which will come out on Monday, the 13th of December, Nbz's birthday. And we will be going over our top 5, potentially top 10, we need to discuss that, Nintendo games of the year. That will be a joint list. If you listen to a ton of us talk about a ton of Nintendo games today, we actually have a whole show dedicated to talking about Nintendo games called This Nintendo Life. You can subscribe to Patreon for $1 a month and get access to all of those episodes. And that's where we will be doing our top 10 or top 5 Nintendo games of the year. There's been a lot of good ones this year, so that's going to be a combined list coming out on Monday 13th of December. And then the big one, episode 211 of This Nintendo Life, coming out Monday the 20th of December. That will be the top 10 games of 2021. It has to have been available on a Nintendo system in the year 2021. I think that's also going to be a combined list, obviously, and that's going to be a good one. I mean, there's a ton of games to get through.
Indies ruled the roost this year. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of good stuff to chat about.
Loads of stuff to talk about. And then, we also have another bonus show on Patreon called Bonus Bits. And we're going to talk about the Wheel of Time so far. So that's going to be the first 5 episodes that's going to come out on Tuesday, the 7th of December. So you can find out all our episodes of Bonus Bits for a couple of dollars. Just a little tier above.
Absolutely. Obviously, if people want to go over there, that is patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where people can support us. And we had a new patron recently, Bally.
Yes, thank you to our new patron, Ira. Thank you so much for your support. And also thank you to all of our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S., Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and my wife, Caroline. Thank you all for your $10 tier support. But thank you to all of our patrons. Yeah, and as I said, if you want in on that Nintendo show, $1, and you can listen to all the Nintendo Life episodes where we talk about a ton of Nintendo games.
Yeah, all good stuff. So check it out. Appreciate everyone's support over there. Really, really helpful and fun and delightful. So thank you, everybody. You can find us all over the internet in various places. Of course, Twitter is a website that some people go to. Is it advised that you should? Who knows? It's kind of terrible.
Give it
but
a bash.
I'm still there. I'm still there. Haven't kicked me off yet. You can find me at Lord NBZ on Twitter. Where can they find you, Bally?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91. I posted my best yet Halo Infinite multiplayer score. I got 19 kills and 7 deaths. Which,
pretty good.
Doesn't
pretty
sound
good
amazing,
stuff.
but that's a lot. That's a lot for me. So
that's progress for Bally.
Chuffed.
He's getting there. He's popping off. For sure. Obviously, you can find the podcast Twitter at TNL Podcast. Follow that for a bunch of stuff. I will be putting that poll up for people to vote on their own Nintendo games of the year, and so hopefully we'll have a bit of a community list going. But yeah, go check that out on Twitter, and it'll be posted in our Discord as well, which obviously all the links you can find in the description of the show, our YouTube channel, our Discord, all that good stuff. Go hang out there, go post about stuff, chat about our list, give us your thoughts on our list so far. That would be great. So yep, you can also obviously find the show in various places on the internet. We are on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, and shout out to Spotify. Seems like we grew a little bit on Spotify this year. More people using that as a podcast platform. Personally, I don't use it, but I think it's good that they're out there for more people to get a wider audience. So yeah, thanks if you're listening to us on Spotify, because we get that cool Spotify Wrapped thing at the end of the year. Everyone gets that for their own music listening habits, but fun thing about being a podcast is that they tell you your stats for how well you've done in the year, which is a good thing.
It's fun seeing all the parents moaning about how often their children are listening to like Frozen, and it's like, you've listened to Let It Go 300 times this year.
Their Spotify account's just ruined, completely destroyed because of children.
I've been enjoying all the Spotify beef.
Yeah, it's been good stuff. Great. Well, I think that's pretty much it. I'm gonna go and play some fucking Oculus now. I'll see you guys later, I guess, because gotta go and live in my virtual world now for the rest of my life. But yeah, thanks everybody. We'll be back very soon with some more video game chat and game of the year stuff. Looking forward to it. So till then, thanks for listening, folks. We'll be back soon. Bye bye. The musical interlude used on today's episode was Begin Again from Sayonara Wild Hearts. Copyright Simogo 2019.